Hello dear students! In this lesson I'd like to make an introduction to the cybersecurity topic. It will help you to understand what we are going to learn in this course and how to navigate between different lessons in the course. Today we'll cover a comprehensive range of topics in cybersecurity. We'll start with the definition and importance of cybersecurity, establishing why it's critical in today's digital landscape. Next, we'll explore the current cyber threat landscape, diving into various types of threats, including malware, phishing attacks, and advanced persistent threats. We'll also analyze real-world case studies of cyber attacks to gain insights into their impact and the lessons learned. Following that, I'll introduce you to several threat analysis models, such as STRIDE and DREAD, highlighting how these frameworks help identify and mitigate risks. Next, we'll discuss the OWASP framework and its significant role in enhancing application security, including tools and standards like the Application Security Verification Standard. We'll then delve into security architecture design and best practices, emphasizing the principles of being secure by design. We'll also cover the types of security controls, including preventive, detective, and corrective measures, and discuss the importance of writing and maintaining a security design document. Additionally, we'll look at the significance of documenting security requirements and controls. Finally, we'll wrap up with an overview of the Security Operations Center and discuss incident management and its critical role in cybersecurity. Let's start our lesson. Cybersecurity is fundamentally the practice of protecting systems, networks, and programs from digital attacks. In today's interconnected world, where technology plays a crucial role in our daily lives, the importance of cybersecurity cannot be overstated. Firstly, it serves to safeguard sensitive data, including personal, financial, and confidential information, from unauthorized access and breaches. As we increasingly rely on digital platforms, the threat of cyber attacks such as malware and ransomware poses significant risks to individuals and organizations alike. Therefore, effective cybersecurity measures are vital to prevent these attacks and ensure the continuity of operations. Moreover, a robust cybersecurity framework helps maintain trust between organizations and their customers. When individuals know that their information is secure, they are more likely to engage with a business, thus fostering a loyal customer base. Additionally, compliance with regulatory requirements is another critical aspect. Organizations must adhere to various legal standards that mandate the protection of data. Furthermore, cybersecurity plays a key role in business continuity. In the event of a cyber incident, having effective response strategies in place ensures that operations can continue with minimal disruption. Lastly, protecting an organization's reputation is crucial, as a single data breach can lead to significant damage to credibility and trust in the market. As we delve into the current cyber threat landscape, it's essential to understand the various dimensions of threats that organizations and individuals face today. The digital world is constantly evolving, and with it, the tactics employed by cyber criminals have become increasingly sophisticated. I want to make a note that this is an overview lesson, and you have multiple hours still to watch and learn from my course about cybersecurity. So right now, I will make a high-level overview that should help you to navigate in the course and understand at least some details about what we are going to learn. And during the course, we are going to learn cyber threats in depth. And of course, if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to post your questions below the video, and I will be happy to answer. To begin with, we see a significant rise in malware attacks. Malware, which includes viruses, trojans, and ransomware, is designed to infiltrate and disrupt systems. Ransomware, in particular, has gained notoriety as attackers encrypt an organization's data and demand payment for its release. This threat highlights the urgent need for robust cybersecurity measures, as the financial and reputational damage from such attacks can be devastating. In addition to malware, phishing attacks have become alarmingly prevalent. These attacks typically involve deceptive emails or messages designed to trick individuals into revealing sensitive information, such as login credentials. As technology advances, So too do the tactics used in phishing, making it more challenging for individuals to discern legitimate communications from malicious ones. Consequently, awareness and education are critical in combating this threat. Furthermore, we cannot overlook the risks associated with man-in-the-middle attacks. In this scenario, an attacker secretly intercepts and relays messages between two parties, often without their knowledge. This type of threat underscores the importance of secure communication channels, such as the use of encryption, to protect sensitive information during transmission. Moreover, denial-of-service attacks present another significant challenge. These attacks aim to overwhelm a system with traffic, rendering it inoperable. Such disruptions can lead to severe operational downtime, highlighting the necessity for organizations to implement effective mitigation strategies to maintain service availability. In recent years, we have also witnessed an increase in insider threats. These can come from employees or contractors who intentionally or unintentionally compromise security. This phenomenon emphasizes the need for comprehensive security training and policies that address not only external threats, but also the potential risks from within an organization. Additionally, we should be aware of the emergent threat of social engineering. This encompasses a range of tactics that exploit human psychology to manipulate individuals into divulging confidential information. Social engineering can take many forms, including pretexting, baiting, and tailgating. The human factor is often the weakest link in security, reinforcing the need for ongoing security awareness training for all employees. Lastly, the rise of advanced persistent threats poses a significant concern for organizations, particularly in sectors such as finance and government. Advanced persistent threats involve prolonged and targeted cyber attacks, where attackers gain unauthorized access to a network and remain undetected for extended periods. This necessitates the implementation of advanced threat detection and response capabilities, as well as a proactive security posture. Finally, it's important to recognize the evolving nature of cyber threats, driven in part by advancements in technology. With the rise of the Internet of Things, for instance, more devices are connected to the Internet than ever before, expanding the attack surface available to cybercriminals. Consequently, organizations must remain vigilant and proactive in their cybersecurity efforts to adapt to this changing landscape. To truly understand the implications of cybersecurity, it is beneficial to examine real-world case studies of cyber attacks. These examples illustrate not only the tactics employed by cybercriminals, but also the profound impact such attacks can have on organizations and individuals. One of the most notable examples is the Equifax breach of 2017. This incident exposed the personal information of approximately 147 million people, including social security numbers, birth dates, and addresses. The breach occurred due to a vulnerability in a web application framework that Equifax had failed to patch. This case highlights the critical importance of timely software updates and the need for organizations to prioritize vulnerability management. Furthermore, it emphasizes the potential consequences of inadequate security practices, which can lead to significant reputational damage and financial loss. Another significant case is the WannaCry ransomware attack, which affected hundreds of thousands of computers in over 150 countries in May 2017. This attack exploited a vulnerability in Microsoft Windows, encrypting users' files and demanding ransom payments in Bitcoin. The rapid spread of WannaCry illustrated how quickly malware can propagate across networks, particularly in environments that lack proper security measures. Additionally, it underscored the necessity for organizations to implement comprehensive backup strategies, as those with secure backups were able to restore their systems without succumbing to the ransom demands. We must also consider the Target data breach of 2013, which compromised the credit and debit card information of over 40 million customers. This breach originated from network credentials stolen from a third-party vendor, highlighting the risks associated with supply chain security. The incident serves as a reminder that organizations must extend their cybersecurity measures beyond their internal systems to encompass all third-party relationships, reinforcing the importance of vendor management and rigorous security assessments. Moreover, the SolarWinds attack, which came to light in late 2020, is another compelling case study. This sophisticated supply chain attack involved the insertion of malicious code into a widely used software platform, impacting thousands of organizations, including government agencies. The SolarWinds incident showcases the growing threat of advanced persistent threats, where attackers employ stealthy tactics to maintain long-term access to compromised systems. This case emphasizes the need for organizations to adopt a proactive and layered security approach, incorporating threat detection and incident response capabilities to mitigate such risks. Lastly, we should examine the Colonial Pipeline ransomware attack in May 2021, which resulted in the shutdown of a major fuel pipeline supplying the east coast of the United States. This attack not only disrupted fuel supply, but also prompted widespread panic buying at gas stations. The incident underscores the potential impact of cyber attacks on critical infrastructure and the interconnectedness of various sectors. It highlights the need for enhanced cybersecurity measures in critical industries, as well as the importance of developing effective incident response plans. As we delve into the realm of cybersecurity, understanding threat analysis models is essential for effectively identifying and mitigating potential risks. These models provide structured frameworks that help organizations assess threats in a systematic way, ensuring a comprehensive approach to security. And again, I want to highlight the goal of this lesson. In this lesson, we are making an overview. All the details you will be able to learn gradually during the course, so no stress. And in case you have any questions, please post them below the video and I will be happy to answer. To begin with, one of the most widely recognized models is STRIDE. This acronym stands for Spoofing, Tampering, Repudiation, Information Disclosure, Denial of Service, and Elevation of Privilege. Each element of STRIDE represents a distinct category of threats that can compromise system security. For example, spoofing refers to an attacker impersonating a legitimate user or device, while tampering involves unauthorized modifications to data. By utilizing the STRIDE model, organizations can systematically evaluate their systems for vulnerabilities associated with each of these threat categories, allowing them to implement targeted security controls. Another important model is DREAD, which stands for Damage, Reproducibility, Exploitability, Affected Users, and Discoverability. DREAD focuses on quantifying and prioritizing threats based on these 5 factors. For instance, assessing the damage a potential threat could cause helps organizations gauge the severity of its impact. Exploitability examines how easily an attacker could execute the threat, while affected users evaluates how many individuals would be impacted. By assigning numerical values to these factors, organizations can prioritize threats based on their overall risk, allowing for more effective resource allocation in mitigation efforts. Additionally, the Parkerian Hexat offers a more nuanced view by incorporating 6 elements: confidentiality, integrity, availability, authenticity, possession, and utility. This model emphasizes that security is not solely about protecting information, but also involves ensuring that it is accessible and usable when needed. By evaluating threats against these 6 dimensions, organizations can gain a comprehensive understanding of their security posture and address potential weaknesses. Furthermore, attack trees are another useful tool in threat analysis. This model visualizes the various ways an attacker could achieve a specific goal, breaking it down into a tree structure of potential attack vectors. Each branch represents a different method of attack, allowing security professionals to identify the most likely and impactful threats. This approach facilitates proactive defense strategies by enabling organizations to focus on high-risk areas. Incorporating threat modeling into the software development lifecycle is also crucial. By integrating models like STRIDE and DREAD early in the design phase, Organizations can identify and address potential vulnerabilities before they are embedded in the system. This proactive approach not only enhances security, but also reduces the cost of remediation in later stages. To understand the landscape of cybersecurity, it is essential to recognize the contributions of the Open Web Application Security Project. Founded in 2001, OWASP is a non-profit organization dedicated to improving the security of software. Its mission is to provide unbiased, practical information about computer security and to promote secure software development practices. At the heart of OWASP's initiatives is the OWASP Top 10, a regularly updated list that outlines the most critical security vulnerabilities affecting web applications. Each entry on this list highlights common threats such as injection attacks, broken authentication, and cross-site scripting. By focusing on these prevalent issues, OWASP empowers organizations to prioritize their security efforts and allocate resources effectively to mitigate these risks. The OWASP Top 10 serves as both an educational tool and a practical guide for developers and security professionals alike. In addition to the Top 10, OWASP offers a variety of resources and projects that contribute to the field of cybersecurity. For instance, the OWASP Application Security Verification Standard provides a framework for specifying security requirements and verifying the security of web applications. By establishing a standard for security verification, organizations can ensure that their applications are robust and resistant to common vulnerabilities. OWASP also promotes the use of security testing tools through its projects, such as the OWASP-Z Attack Proxy. ZAP is a powerful open-source tool designed for finding vulnerabilities in web applications during the testing phase. By incorporating tools like ZAP into the development process, organizations can identify and address security issues early, ultimately leading to more secure software. Moreover, OWASP emphasizes the importance of community involvement in advancing cybersecurity knowledge. Through various chapters and local events, OWASP fosters collaboration among security professionals, developers, and organizations. This sense of community not only encourages knowledge sharing, but also drives the development of innovative security solutions and best practices. Another significant aspect of OWASP's role in cybersecurity is its focus on training and education. The organization offers numerous resources including online courses, documentation, and community-driven workshops. These educational initiatives are crucial for raising awareness about security issues and equipping professionals with the skills needed to address them effectively. Additionally, OWASP provides guidance on secure coding practices and development methodologies. By integrating security into the software development lifecycle, organizations can adopt a proactive approach to security, ensuring that security is not an afterthought, but a fundamental aspect of the development process. As we explore the domain of security architecture design, it becomes clear that establishing a robust framework is fundamental to protecting an organization's information systems. Security architecture involves the structured design of security protocols and controls that safeguard data and ensure the integrity of IT infrastructure. By implementing best practices in this area, organizations can significantly enhance their security posture. To begin with, a key principle in security architecture design is the concept of defense in depth. This strategy involves layering multiple security controls to protect assets at various levels. For example, an organization might use firewalls, intrusion detection systems, and endpoint protection in tandem. By creating multiple layers of defense, even if one layer is breached, other layers can still provide protection, thereby reducing the overall risk. Another critical aspect is the implementation of a zero-trust model. This approach operates under the premise that no user or device, whether inside or outside the network, should be trusted by default. Instead, every access request must be verified and authenticated. This model emphasizes strict identity and access management controls, ensuring that users have only the minimum access necessary to perform their tasks. By adopting a zero-trust architecture, organizations can better safeguard their systems against internal and external threats. Moreover, incorporating security by design into the software development lifecycle is essential. This principle advocates for integrating security considerations from the outset of a project rather than treating it as an afterthought. By identifying potential security risks during the design phase, developers can implement appropriate controls and reduce vulnerabilities in the final product. This proactive approach not only enhances security but also minimizes the costs associated with post-deployment fixes. Additionally, risk assessment plays a vital role in security architecture design. Conducting regular risk assessments allows organizations to identify, analyze, and prioritize potential threats to their systems. This process helps in allocating resources effectively, ensuring that the most critical vulnerabilities are addressed first. By integrating risk management into the architecture design, organizations can create a tailored security strategy that aligns with their specific needs and risk tolerance. Furthermore, it is essential to establish clear security policies and governance structures. A well-defined security policy outlines the organization's approach to security, including roles and responsibilities, acceptable use, and incident response procedures. Governance frameworks such as COBIT or NIST can guide organizations in aligning their security practices with business objectives and regulatory requirements. This alignment ensures that security is integrated into the overall organizational strategy. Another best practice is the use of secure configurations for hardware and software. Ensuring that all systems are configured securely from the start can significantly reduce vulnerabilities. This includes disabling unnecessary services, applying security patches promptly, and ensuring proper network segmentation. By establishing baseline configurations and regularly reviewing them, organizations can maintain a strong security posture. Finally, ongoing monitoring and incident response are critical components of effective security architecture. Continuous monitoring of systems and networks allows organizations to detect and respond to security incidents swiftly. Implementing a robust incident response plan ensures that when a breach occurs, the organization can mitigate its impact, recover swiftly, and learn from the incident to improve future security measures. As we examine the principles of secure by design, it becomes evident that this approach is fundamental to creating resilient and secure software systems. Secure by design emphasizes integrating security considerations into every phase of the software development lifecycle, rather than treating security as an afterthought. This proactive methodology not only enhances the security of applications, but also mitigates potential risks early in the development process. To begin with, one of the core tenets of secure by design is the principle of least privilege. This principle dictates that users and systems should have the minimum level of access necessary to perform their functions. By restricting access rights, organizations can significantly reduce the risk of unauthorized access and limit the potential damage that could arise from a compromised account. Implementing this principle requires careful consideration during the design phase, ensuring that roles and permissions are clearly defined and enforced. Another important aspect of secure by design is input validation. Applications often rely on user input, which can be a vector for various attacks, such as SQL injection and cross-site scripting. By incorporating strict input validation mechanisms from the outset, developers can ensure that only properly formatted data is processed by the application. This approach not only enhances security but also improves the overall robustness of the application, making it less susceptible to exploitation. Furthermore, defense in depth is a critical principle that aligns with the secure by design philosophy. This concept advocates for multiple layers of security controls throughout the system. For instance, even if an attacker bypasses one layer of defense, additional layers, such as firewalls, encryption, and intrusion detection systems, can still provide protection. Integrating these layers during the design phase ensures a comprehensive security strategy that addresses potential vulnerabilities from various angles. In addition, the principle of fail securely emphasizes that systems should be designed to fail in a secure manner. This means that when a failure occurs, whether due to a bug, an attack, or an unexpected event, the system should not expose sensitive information or create new vulnerabilities. For example, if an application crashes, it should not reveal debugging information or internal states that could aid an attacker. This principle highlights the importance of considering security implications during failure scenarios. Moreover, regular security testing should be an integral part of the secure by design approach. This includes both static analysis, where code is examined without execution, and dynamic testing, where the application is tested in a running state. By incorporating testing early and often, developers can identify and remediate security vulnerabilities before deployment, significantly reducing the risk of breaches in production environments. Another essential aspect is documentation and clear coding standards. Establishing comprehensive security documentation and coding guidelines ensures that all developers are on the same page regarding security practices. This fosters a culture of security awareness within the development team and helps maintain consistent security standards across all projects. When security principles are well documented and communicated, they are more likely to be followed. Finally, collaboration between security and development teams is vital for the success of secure by design initiatives. Engaging security professionals during the design and development phases ensures that security considerations are integrated from the start. This collaboration not only enhances the overall security of the application, but also facilitates knowledge sharing, leading to a more security-conscious development environment. As we explore the various types of security controls, it is essential to understand their distinct roles in protecting information systems and mitigating risks. Security controls are the measures implemented to safeguard assets and ensure the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of data. They can be categorized into three primary types: preventive, detective, and corrective controls. Each type plays a unique role in a comprehensive security strategy. To begin with, preventive controls are designed to deter security incidents before they occur. These controls aim to reduce the likelihood of a threat exploiting a vulnerability. Examples of preventive controls include firewalls, which act as a barrier between trusted internal networks and untrusted external networks, as well as access controls that limit who can enter or interact with sensitive systems. Additionally, implementing strong password policies and multi-factor authentication are crucial preventive measures that enhance security by making unauthorized access more challenging. By focusing on prevention, organizations can proactively safeguard their assets and reduce the risk of breaches. In contrast, detective controls are implemented to identify and alert security teams of potential security incidents as they occur. These controls play a critical role in monitoring systems and networks for suspicious activity. For instance, intrusion detection systems analyze network traffic for signs of unauthorized access or anomalies, while log management solutions aggregate and analyze event logs from various sources to detect unusual patterns. The effectiveness of detective controls hinges on timely alerts and accurate reporting, enabling organizations to respond quickly to potential threats. By focusing on detection, organizations can minimize the impact of incidents that do occur and facilitate timely response efforts. Finally, corrective controls are designed to respond to security incidents after they have been detected. These controls aim to restore systems to normal operation and mitigate the damage caused by the incident. Examples of corrective controls include incident response plans that outline the steps to take when a breach occurs, as well as data recovery procedures to restore lost or compromised data from backups. Additionally, conducting post-incident analyses allows organizations to learn from incidents, refining their security policies and controls to prevent similar occurrences in the future. By focusing on correction, organizations can improve their resilience and ensure that they are better prepared for future threats. It is important to note that these types of controls do not operate in isolation. Rather, they complement each other within a holistic security framework. For example, while preventive controls aim to stop incidents from happening, detective controls provide the necessary oversight to identify breaches that slip through preventive measures. Subsequently, corrective controls ensure that organizations can effectively respond and recover from incidents. Furthermore, the integration of all three types of controls is vital for developing a robust security posture. Organizations should conduct regular assessments to identify potential vulnerabilities and gaps in their security controls. By understanding the effectiveness of their preventive, detective, and corrective measures, organizations can enhance their overall security strategy and better protect their assets. Writing and maintaining a security design document is a critical aspect of developing secure applications and systems. The security design document serves as a comprehensive blueprint that outlines the security architecture, controls, and processes to be implemented throughout the software development lifecycle. By effectively crafting and updating this document, organizations can ensure that security considerations are integrated into their projects from the outset. To begin with, the security design document should clearly articulate the security requirements of the project. This involves identifying and documenting specific security needs based on the nature of the application, regulatory obligations, and organizational policies. By establishing clear security requirements, the security design document provides a foundation for subsequent design decisions and ensures that security is aligned with business objectives. Next, the security design document should include a detailed security architecture section that describes the overall design and structure of the security controls to be implemented. This includes specifying the security mechanisms such as firewalls, encryption protocols, and authentication methods, as well as how these components interact within the system. By providing a clear architectural overview, the security design document helps stakeholders understand how security will be integrated into the application and the rationale behind these design choices. Moreover, the security design document should encompass a risk assessment that identifies potential threats and vulnerabilities associated with the application. This assessment involves evaluating the likelihood and impact of various risks, which informs the design of appropriate security controls. By systematically addressing risks in the security design document, organizations can prioritize security efforts and allocate resources effectively to mitigate the most critical threats. Another important aspect of a security design document is the inclusion of security testing and validation strategies. This section outlines the methodologies that will be employed to assess the security posture of the application, such as penetration testing, vulnerability assessments, and code reviews. By specifying testing procedures in the security design document, organizations can ensure that security is evaluated at various stages of development and that any identified vulnerabilities are addressed promptly. Additionally, the security design document should detail the incident response plan relevant to the application. This plan outlines the steps to be taken in the event of a security breach or incident, ensuring that the organization is prepared to respond effectively. Including an incident response strategy in the security design document reinforces the importance of being proactive in addressing potential security threats. It is also crucial to recognize that a security design document is a living document. As the application evolves and new threats emerge, the security design document must be updated to reflect changes in the security landscape. Regular reviews and updates should be scheduled to ensure that the document remains relevant and accurately represents the current state of the application's security posture. This ongoing maintenance helps organizations adapt to new challenges and ensures that security considerations continue to be prioritized throughout the development lifecycle. Finally, collaboration among various stakeholders, such as developers, security teams, and project managers, is essential in creating and maintaining an effective security design document. By fostering communication and collaboration, organizations can ensure that security requirements are well understood and integrated into the design process. This collective effort promotes a culture of security awareness and accountability across the organization. Documenting security requirements and controls is a crucial component of an organization's cybersecurity strategy. This practice not only establishes a clear framework for security, but also enhances compliance, facilitates communication, and strengthens overall security posture. To begin with, comprehensive documentation of security requirements ensures that all stakeholders have a shared understanding of the security needs associated with a system or application. By clearly defining these requirements, organizations can align their security measures with business objectives, regulatory obligations, and industry standards. For instance, documenting specific security controls, such as access restrictions or data encryption methods, provides a reference point for both development and operational teams, ensuring that security considerations are consistently applied throughout the software development lifecycle. Moreover, documenting security controls enables organizations to establish a systematic approach to risk management. By detailing the specific controls implemented to mitigate identified risks, organizations can assess their effectiveness and identify any gaps. This documentation serves as a foundation for ongoing risk assessments, allowing organizations to adapt their security strategies in response to evolving threats. For example, if a new vulnerability is discovered, having a clear record of existing controls makes it easier to evaluate their sufficiency and make necessary adjustments. In addition, thorough documentation plays a significant role in compliance and auditing. Many industries are subject to regulatory frameworks that require strict adherence to security standards, such as HIPAA for healthcare or PCI DSS for payment card processing. By documenting security requirements and controls, organizations can demonstrate their commitment to compliance during audits. This not only helps in avoiding penalties, but also builds trust with customers and stakeholders who expect their data to be handled securely. Furthermore, effective documentation fosters communication and collaboration among teams. Security requirements and controls should not only be the concern of the IT or security departments, they must be understood and implemented across the organization. By documenting these elements clearly, organizations can facilitate training and awareness programs that engage all employees in security practices. This shared understanding promotes a culture of security within the organization, where everyone recognizes their role in maintaining a secure environment. Another important aspect of documentation is its role in incident response. In the event of a security breach, having a detailed record of security requirements and controls allows incident response teams to quickly assess what measures were in place and how they may have failed. This information is invaluable for conducting post-incident analyses, helping organizations learn from breaches and improve their security measures. By documenting lessons learned and recommendations for future improvements, organizations can continuously enhance their security posture. Finally, as organizations grow and evolve, so too do their security needs. Documenting security requirements and controls creates a living resource that can be updated to reflect changes in technology, threats, and business operations. Regular reviews and updates to this documentation ensure that it remains relevant and effective. This adaptability is essential in a dynamic cybersecurity landscape where new threats and vulnerabilities emerge constantly. As we delve into the realm of cybersecurity, understanding the role and function of a Security Operations Center is essential. A Security Operations Center serves as the centralized unit responsible for monitoring, detecting, and responding to security incidents within an organization. It plays a critical role in maintaining the overall security posture and resilience of an organization in an increasingly complex threat landscape. To begin with, the primary function of a Security Operations Center is continuous monitoring of an organization's information systems. This involves utilizing various tools and technologies to analyze network traffic, logs, and other data sources for signs of suspicious activity or potential breaches. By maintaining a constant watch over the IT environment, the Security Operations Center can identify and respond to threats in real time, minimizing the impact of incidents and enhancing overall security. Furthermore, a Security Operations Center typically employs a range of security information and event management systems. These systems aggregate and analyze security data from various sources, enabling analysts to identify patterns and anomalies that may indicate a security threat. By leveraging security information and event management tools, Security Operations Center personnel can correlate events across the network and gain insights into potential vulnerabilities, facilitating a more effective response to incidents. In addition to monitoring, the Security Operations Center is responsible for incident response. When a security incident is detected, the Security Operations Center team activates an established incident response plan to contain, eradicate, and recover from the threat. This involves coordinating efforts across various departments such as IT, legal, and communications to ensure a comprehensive response. By having a dedicated incident response capability, organizations can minimize downtime and reduce the potential damage caused by security breaches. Another critical function of the Security Operations Center is threat intelligence gathering and analysis. This involves collecting and analyzing information about emerging threats, vulnerabilities, and attack methodologies. By staying informed about the latest cyber threats, Security Operations Center teams can proactively enhance their defenses and adjust their monitoring strategies accordingly. Incorporating threat intelligence into their operations allows Security Operations Centers to anticipate and prepare for potential attacks before they occur. Moreover, forensics and post-incident analysis are essential components of a Security Operations Center's responsibilities. After an incident is resolved, Security Operations Center personnel conduct a thorough analysis to understand the root cause and assess the effectiveness of the response. This forensic analysis helps identify lessons learned and informs future security practices and policies. By continuously improving based on past experiences, Security Operations Centers can enhance their readiness for future threats. Collaboration with other teams and departments within the organization is also vital for the success of a Security Operations Center. Effective communication between the Security Operations Center, IT, and risk management teams ensures that security measures align with overall business objectives and that potential risks are identified and addressed promptly. This cross-departmental collaboration fosters a culture of security awareness and responsibility across the organization. Lastly, it is important to recognize that a Security Operations Center can be structured in different ways, depending on the size and needs of the organization. Some organizations may choose to maintain an in-house Security Operations Center, staffed by dedicated security professionals, while others may opt for a managed Security Operations Center service, leveraging external expertise and resources. Regardless of the approach, the fundamental goals of monitoring, detecting, and responding to security threats remain the same. In the realm of cybersecurity, incident management plays a pivotal role in ensuring that organizations can effectively respond to and recover from security incidents. This process encompasses the policies, procedures, and tools necessary to identify, assess, and mitigate incidents, ultimately minimizing their impact on business operations. To begin with, the primary goal of incident management is to restore normal operations as quickly as possible while minimizing damage. This involves having a structured approach to manage incidents, which includes clear definitions of what constitutes an incident, roles and responsibilities, and predefined response strategies. By establishing a well-defined incident management framework, organizations can ensure a swift and coordinated response to potential threats. A key component of incident management is the incident response plan. This plan outlines the step-by-step procedures that should be followed when a security incident occurs. It typically includes processes for incident identification, containment, eradication, recovery, and lessons learned. By having a comprehensive incident response plan in place, organizations can ensure that their teams are prepared to act effectively in the face of an incident, reducing confusion and uncertainty. Another critical aspect is incident detection and reporting. This involves the use of monitoring tools and technologies such as security information and event management systems to identify potential incidents in real time. Early detection is essential as it allows for quicker response times and can significantly mitigate the impact of a breach. Moreover, encouraging a culture of reporting among employees helps to ensure that any suspicious activity is communicated to the appropriate teams promptly. Once an incident is detected, the next step is incident classification and prioritization. This process involves assessing the severity and impact of the incident to determine the appropriate response. Incidents can vary widely in nature, from minor security breaches to major data leaks, and understanding the potential consequences helps teams allocate resources effectively. For instance, a critical incident that compromises sensitive customer data will require a more immediate and robust response compared to a minor malware infection. Following classification, the focus shifts to containment and eradication. Containment strategies aim to limit the spread of the incident and prevent further damage. This might involve isolating affected systems or disabling compromised accounts. Once contained, the next step is to eradicate the root cause of the incident, ensuring that the vulnerability is addressed and cannot be exploited again. Recovery is another vital phase of incident management. This involves restoring affected systems and services to normal operation. During this phase, it is essential to ensure that all systems are thoroughly scanned and secured before bringing them back online. Additionally, organizations should continuously monitor the environment to ensure that the incident has been fully resolved and that no residual effects remain. Finally, post-incident analysis is crucial for improving future incident management efforts. After an incident is resolved, conducting a thorough review of the response process helps identify lessons learned and areas for improvement. This analysis should examine the effectiveness of the incident response plan, the performance of the response team, and any communication gaps that may have arisen. By incorporating these insights into the incident management framework, organizations can enhance their preparedness for future incidents. That's all what I wanted to share with you in this lesson. As I already mentioned, we have a long journey planned for this course. We will make a deep dive into different cybersecurity topics, we will review code examples, and learn how to make our systems more secure and protected. Let's recap what we've learned in the lesson. We learned the definition and importance of cybersecurity, establishing a foundational understanding of its role in protecting information. We explored the current cyber threat landscape, examining various types of threats such as malware, phishing, and insider threats. Through case studies, we analyzed real-world cyber attacks to understand their impact and the lessons learned. We introduced several threat analysis models, including STRIDE and DREAD, highlighting their application in identifying and mitigating risks. We discussed the OWASP framework and its significance in enhancing application security, focusing on tools and standards like Application Security Verification Standard. We covered best practices in security architecture design and the principles of being secure by design, emphasizing their importance in developing resilient systems. Lastly, we reviewed incident management processes and the critical role they play in responding to and recovering from cybersecurity incidents. That's all for this lesson. Stay tuned. Thanks a lot for your attention. Have a great day and see you in the next lesson. Hello team. Today we will delve into general security tips for writing code with safety in mind. In this session we will discuss essential best practices for ensuring code security. Our focus will begin with high-relevance techniques that address critical threats to application safety, emphasizing the importance of integrity and safe handling of external inputs. These foundational practices are crucial for building robust and secure systems. We will then move on to moderate and lower relevance strategies, which, while not as critical, still contribute significantly to overall security. These practices involve managing resources effectively, ensuring thorough reviews of external components, and maintaining proper permissions. By the end of our discussion, you will have a comprehensive understanding of various approaches to safeguard your code. Let's get started. In the lesson, we will explore essential best practices for writing secure code, organized by relevance to help prioritize our focus on critical threat mitigation. At the top of our list are high-relevance techniques, including the implementation of checksums or hashes to verify code integrity, the avoidance of passing user-supplied data to dynamic execution functions, and the use of approved managed code over unmanaged code. These practices are vital for protecting applications from common vulnerabilities and ensuring their reliability. As we move further down the list, we'll address moderate relevance concerns, such as protecting shared resources from concurrent access and reviewing third-party code for safety. Finally, we'll touch on low-relevance practices that deal with edge cases, including the use of task-specific APIs and safe updating practices. Each item on this list contributes to a comprehensive approach to code security, and we will delve into the details of each technique to understand their significance and implementation. And on this slide, you can find the same items but grouped according to another criteria. In this second list, we will categorize best practices for code security based on their complexity, providing an alternative approach to understanding these principles. This classification begins with basic practices, such as explicitly initializing variables and restricting user capabilities, which lay a foundational understanding of secure coding. These essential techniques help ensure that code is robust and less prone to vulnerabilities from the outset. As we progress to intermediate and advanced practices, we'll address more complex concepts like utilizing lock-in mechanisms to prevent race conditions and implementing checksums for code integrity. This tiered approach allows you to select a categorization method that suits your learning style, making it easier to grasp the underlying principles of secure coding. By understanding these best practices through different lenses, you can enhance your coding skills and develop a more security-conscious mindset. As I promised, let's provide a detailed overview of each technique. As you saw, there are different ways to group these practices. However, for the sake of this lesson, let's organize all the techniques by relevance and review them in that order. And in case you have any questions during the lesson, no need to wait till the end of the lesson. Write them in Q&A section below the video and I will be happy to answer. In this slide, let's delve deeper into best practices for code security, specifically focusing on high-relevance techniques that are crucial for mitigating critical threats. First, let's discuss the implementation of checksums or hashes. This practice is fundamental for verifying the integrity of our code, libraries, executables, and configuration files. By generating a checksum or hash, we create a unique fingerprint for each file. When we later compare this value to an expected one, any discrepancies can alert us to potential tampering or unauthorized modifications. This proactive approach ensures that the code we rely on remains authentic and unaltered, significantly reducing the risk of introducing malicious code into our systems. Next, I recommend switching our attention to the avoidance of passing user-supplied data to dynamic execution functions. This is critical because allowing unvalidated user inputs to influence code execution can lead to severe vulnerabilities, such as code injection attacks. To counteract this, we must rigorously validate and sanitize all inputs before their use in functions like eval or exec. By ensuring that only safe and expected data is processed, we can significantly reduce the likelihood of executing harmful code, thereby enhancing the overall security of our applications. Lastly, let's emphasize the use of tested and approved managed code instead of writing new unmanaged code for common tasks. Managed code, which runs in a controlled environment provided by platforms like .NET or Java, often includes built-in security features that help prevent vulnerabilities. By leveraging established libraries and frameworks, we benefit from the extensive testing and community support behind them. This not only minimizes security risks, but also accelerates development time, as we can rely on proven solutions rather than reinventing the wheel with potentially insecure custom code. In this slide, let's delve deeper into general security tips for writing code with safety in mind, focusing on moderate relevance techniques that address common security concerns. First, let's discuss the protection of shared variables and resources from inappropriate concurrent access. In concurrent programming environments, multiple threads or processes often need to access shared data simultaneously. If not properly managed, this can lead to race conditions, where the outcome depends on the unpredictable timing of events, resulting in data corruption or inconsistent states. To mitigate these risks, I recommend utilizing synchronization mechanisms such as mutexes, which ensures that only one thread can access a resource at any given time. Semaphores can also be employed to control access to shared resources based on counting, providing a more flexible approach. By implementing these techniques, we maintain data integrity and consistency, ensuring our applications function as intended even under concurrent conditions. Now, I recommend switching our attention to the review of secondary applications, third-party code, and libraries. Incorporating external code can introduce vulnerabilities if not carefully evaluated. Therefore, it is essential to determine the business necessity of each piece of third-party software we use. Conducting thorough security audits and code reviews allows us to assess the safety and functionality of these external components. This process includes examining the library's documentation, checking for known vulnerabilities, and ensuring that the code adheres to our security standards. By scrutinizing these dependencies, we can significantly reduce the risk of introducing security flaws that could be exploited by attackers. Lastly, let's emphasize the importance of delaying the raising of elevated privileges until absolutely necessary. Many applications require elevated privileges to perform specific tasks, but maintaining these privileges throughout the application's runtime can expose us to serious risks. By adhering to the principle of least privilege, we ensure that users and processes have only the permissions they need to perform their functions. This means elevating privileges only for the duration of a specific task and promptly dropping them afterward. This practice minimizes the attack surface. If an attacker gains access during a privilege escalation, the potential damage is limited. It reinforces a security-first mindset in our coding approach, making our applications inherently safer. Let's delve deeper into each of the low-relevance security practices, as they are essential for addressing edge cases and lesser-known threats in code safety. First, when we talk about the utilization of task-specific built-in APIs, this approach helps streamline operations while minimizing security risks. Built-in APIs are designed with security in mind and encapsulate the complexity of interacting with the operating system. For example, when performing file operations, using a dedicated file management API prevents the potential dangers of command injection that can arise from executing shell commands. This practice not only protects against unauthorized access, but also enhances code readability and maintainability, as it abstracts away the lower-level details. Next, let's consider the implementation of safe updating practices. By incorporating cryptographic signatures for code updates, we establish a robust verification mechanism that ensures the integrity of the code being deployed. This practice allows developers to confirm that updates originate from a trusted source and have not been altered in transit. For instance, before applying an update, a system could check the accompanying cryptographic signature against a known public key. This proactive measure is crucial in protecting against malware or unintended modifications, thereby maintaining the overall security posture of the application. Now, let's focus on the explicit initialization of all variables and data stores. This technique is essential to prevent undefined behavior in your code. When variables are not initialized, they may contain arbitrary values, which can lead to unpredictable results and security vulnerabilities. For instance, if a variable that should hold user input is used without initialization, it could inadvertently expose sensitive information or lead to logical errors in calculations. By always initializing variables with known safe values, like setting a string to an empty state or a number to 0, developers can mitigate these risks and ensure that their applications behave as expected. Moving on to the restriction of user capabilities, this practice is vital for maintaining code integrity. By implementing role-based access controls, developers can restrict who has the authority to create or modify code within the system. This not only limits the potential for malicious actions, but also safeguards against unintentional errors by users who may not fully understand the implications of their changes. For example, a development team could designate certain users as editors who can modify existing code, while others may only have permission to run predefined scripts. This clear delineation of responsibilities helps maintain a secure coding environment. Next, let's discuss the use of locking mechanisms to prevent race conditions. In multi-threaded applications, concurrent access to shared resources can lead to inconsistencies and data corruption. By implementing locking mechanisms such as mutexes or semaphores, developers can control access to critical sections of code, ensuring that only one thread can modify shared data at a time. For instance, if multiple threads attempt to update a shared variable simultaneously, using a mutex can prevent conflicts and maintain the integrity of the data. This approach is particularly important in applications where precision and reliability are paramount. Finally, we should emphasize the awareness of calculation errors stemming from the programming language's underlying representation of data types. Different languages have varying limitations on how they handle numerical values, which can lead to overflow, underflow, or precision errors if not carefully managed. For example, using integer types for calculations that exceed their maximum value can result in overflow, while relying on floating point types can introduce precision errors in critical calculations. By understanding these limitations and selecting appropriate data types based on the expected range and precision of values, developers can significantly reduce the likelihood of calculation errors and ensure that their applications perform reliably. As we conclude our exploration of general security tips for writing code with safety in mind, it's essential to reflect on the structured approach we've taken. We categorized best practices into 3 levels of relevance: high, moderate, and low, each serving a distinct purpose in enhancing code security. Starting with high relevance practices, we emphasize the implementation of checksums or hashes, which play a critical role in ensuring the integrity of our code and associated files. This proactive measure helps us detect any unauthorized alterations, safeguarding our applications against malicious tampering. Additionally, we discussed the avoidance of passing user-supplied data to dynamic execution functions, which is crucial for preventing vulnerabilities like code injection attacks. By validating inputs rigorously, we can significantly enhance the security of our systems. Lastly, we highlighted the importance of using tested and approved managed code over unmanaged code, as it typically comes with built-in security features that protect against common threats. Moving on to moderate relevance, we addressed the need for protecting shared variables and resources from inappropriate access. This practice is vital in multi-threaded applications where concurrent modifications can lead to data corruption. We also emphasized the importance of reviewing third-party code and libraries to validate their necessity and safety. Furthermore, we discussed the strategy of delaying elevated privileges until absolutely necessary, which minimizes exposure to potential security risks. Lastly, in our examination of low-relevance practices, we identified several edge cases that, while not as commonly addressed, are nonetheless important. Utilizing task-specific built-in APIs helps avoid the risks associated with executing arbitrary system commands, while implementing safe updating practices with cryptographic signatures ensures that our code remains untampered during updates. We also discussed the explicit initialization of variables to prevent undefined behaviors and the importance of restricting user capabilities to prevent unauthorized code changes. Additionally, the use of locking mechanisms aids in preventing race conditions, and understanding the programming language's underlying representation can help mitigate calculation errors. That's all what I wanted to cover with you in this lesson. Let's recap what we have learned from the lesson. We explored best practices for writing secure code to enhance overall software safety. We learned about the importance of implementing checksums to verify code integrity. We discussed avoiding the use of user-supplied data in dynamic execution functions to prevent vulnerabilities. We examined the benefits of using tested managed code instead of creating unmanaged code. We reviewed strategies for protecting shared resources from concurrent access issues. We highlighted the significance of delaying elevated privileges and promptly dropping them when no longer needed. Lastly, we covered safe updating practices and the initialization of variables to mitigate edge cases. That's it. Thanks a lot for your attention. I wish you a great day and see you in the next lesson. Hello dear students, in this lesson we will learn about techniques for securing inputs through effective validation and sanitization. We will cover key practices to mitigate critical threats, including client data validation and data validation on trusted systems. Next, we'll explore the classification of data sources and the implementation of whitelist-based input validation. We will also discuss centralized validation routines and examine common security concerns such as redirect validation and character set support. Finally, we will address lesser-known threats, including edge cases and specific validation checks. Let's get started. I prepared for you two lists based on different ordering criteria. I did this to help you select the best approach that will help you to remember techniques that we are going to discuss today. Let me show you a list of techniques ordered by relevance. In this lesson, we will explore the best practices for data validation categorized by relevance to security. We'll begin with high-relevance techniques that focus on critical threat mitigation. These include client data validation before processing, validation on trusted systems, and the classification of data sources into trusted and untrusted categories. Additionally, we will cover whitelist-based input validation and the implementation of a centralized input validation routine to ensure comprehensive security throughout the application. Next, we'll move on to moderate relevance practices that address common security concerns, such as redirect data validation and the canonicalization process. We'll also review important aspects like UTF-8 character set, support validation, data length, type, and range validation. Finally, we'll touch upon low-relevance techniques that address edge cases, including ASCII header value verification and specific checks for inputs not covered by standard routines like null byte and path traversal validation. We will review each of these techniques in detail to deepen your understanding of how to implement effective data validation practices. In addition to categorizing data validation techniques by relevance, we can also group them by complexity, which offers another useful approach for understanding and remembering these practices. This method segments the techniques into 3 levels: basic, intermediate, and advanced. Starting with basic techniques, we will cover essential practices such as data type, range, and length validation, along with input rejection on validation failure and AskTEI header value verification. These foundational techniques form the bedrock of effective data validation and are crucial for any application. Moving on to intermediate techniques, we'll explore concepts like the classification of data sources into trusted and untrusted categories, client data validation before processing, and character set specification for UTF-8. Additionally, we will discuss redirect data validation and UTF-8 character set support post-decoding. Finally, advanced techniques include data validation on trusted systems, the canonicalization process, centralized input validation routines, and whitelist-based input validation, along with discrete validation checks for edge cases such as null byte and path traversal validation. By grouping techniques in this manner, you can select the categorization that resonates best with you, making it easier to remember and apply these critical practices. We will delve into each of these techniques in detail, ensuring a comprehensive understanding of how to implement effective data validation strategies. As I promised, let's provide a detailed overview of each technique. As you saw, there are different ways to group these practices. However, for the sake of this lesson, let's organize all the techniques by relevance and review them in that order. Let's start discussing several high-relevance techniques for securing inputs and mitigating critical threats associated with input data validation and sanitization. As illustrated in the table, these techniques are essential for ensuring the integrity and security of our applications. First, we have client data validation. This involves validating all data sent from the client before any processing occurs, which includes checking parameters, URLs, and HTTP headers. By implementing such validations, we can effectively prevent injection attacks and the processing of malformed data. For instance, a valid input like ID equal 123 indicates proper format and type, while an input such as ID equal to a script that invokes alert function poses a severe risk, as it could lead to cross-site scripting vulnerabilities. By validating this data at the client side, we can catch potential threats before they reach the server. Next, we focus on data validation on trusted systems. This technique ensures that any data entering the server is thoroughly validated before being utilized in backend processing. This step is crucial in mitigating server-side vulnerabilities, as servers are often prime targets for attackers. A good example would be a properly formatted JSON input, such as user John, which meets expected data formats. In contrast, an invalid entry like user John inside diamonds instead of double quotes can cause errors or even exploit vulnerabilities if not addressed. By validating data on the server side, we add another layer of security. Moving on, we discuss the classification of data sources. This involves categorizing incoming data as either trusted or untrusted. Data from trusted sources, like internal databases or known APIs, can be processed with minimal validation, while data from untrusted sources must undergo rigorous testing. This approach significantly reduces the risk associated with external data inputs, which are often more vulnerable to malicious content. For instance, accepting input from a trusted API is valid and expected, while data from an unknown source should always be treated with caution and potentially rejected if it doesn't meet strict criteria. Next is whitelist-based input validation, a proactive method that allows only specified safe characters in user inputs. This strategy effectively prevents harmful injections by defining what is acceptable. For example, an input like Hello World 123 is permissible as it consists solely of safe characters, whereas Hello script would be flagged as invalid due to the presence of hazardous characters that could lead to XSS attacks. This approach limits the potential for exploitation by narrowing the scope of acceptable input. Finally, we emphasize the need for a centralized input validation routine. This technique involves creating a unified validation function that is applied consistently across the entire application. By centralizing our validation efforts, we ensure that all inputs are checked against the same criteria, reducing the likelihood of missed validations. A valid input, such as safe value, would pass through the routine without issue, while an injection attempt like drop table users would be identified and rejected. This consistent approach not only simplifies the validation process but also strengthens overall security. Now let's delve into moderate relevance security concerns regarding input validation and sanitization. The table outlines several essential techniques that help safeguard our applications against common vulnerabilities. First, we have redirect data validation. This technique is crucial because redirects can be manipulated to bypass essential application logic, potentially leading users to malicious sites. By validating input data before performing any redirects, we ensure that only safe and intended destinations are accessed. For instance, an input like /safepage is a valid redirect, whereas an input such as /maliciousPage could be used to exploit the application if not properly checked. This validation is vital in maintaining user trust and preventing unauthorized access to sensitive areas of the application. Next, we consider the canonicalization process. This process involves encoding input data to a common character set before any validation occurs. Normalizing inputs helps ensure that variations in encoding do not create security loopholes. For example, the input cafe may be represented in multiple ways depending on the character encoding. By converting it to a standardized form, such as CAF+U00E9, we mitigate issues that could arise from inconsistent handling of characters. If we receive an input like cafe, which may look similar but is encoded differently, it could lead to unexpected behaviors and vulnerabilities, highlighting the importance of canonicalization. Moving on, we have UTF-8 character set support validation. This technique ensures that the system can accurately handle and process UTF-8 characters after decoding. Given that many web applications interact with users globally, it's essential to support a wide range of characters. By validating character support, we prevent issues related to unsupported or incorrectly decoded characters. For instance, an input like Chinese characters is a valid UTF-8 representation. However, an invalid decoding attempt like /EU65E5TTU672C might result in errors or unexpected behavior if the system does not recognize it. Ensuring robust UTF-8 support helps in accommodating diverse user inputs. Next, we emphasize the importance of character set specification. By consistently specifying UTF-8 as the character set for all inputs, we create a clear standard for handling data. This practice reduces the risk of character encoding vulnerabilities that can lead to data corruption or injection attacks. For example, an input like hello followed by Chinese characters is valid under UTF-8, whereas using a different character set, such as in hello world, could yield inconsistent results. Specifying a uniform character set ensures that our application interprets all data in the same way, enhancing reliability. Additionally, data length validation plays a crucial role in maintaining data integrity. This technique checks that input data does not exceed or fall short of acceptable length limits. By enforcing strict length constraints, we can prevent buffer overflows, which can be exploited to execute arbitrary code and ensure that data fits within defined parameters. For instance, an input like short, which is within the maximum limit of 10 characters, is valid, while an overly lengthy input like this is a very long input exceeds that limit and would be flagged as invalid. Implementing length checks is vital for protecting application stability and security. Next, we have data type validation, which is essential for ensuring that inputs conform to expected formats. This technique employs type checks to confirm that the data type matches the application's requirements thereby avoiding type-related errors and potential injection vulnerabilities. For example, a valid integer input like 42 illustrates correct validation, while a string input like 42 does not meet the expected format. By validating data types, we can prevent malicious users from attempting to inject harmful scripts or cause errors within the application. Lastly, data range validation ensures that inputs fall within specified minimum and maximum limits. This technique is particularly important for numerical inputs, as it prevents out-of-bounds errors that could lead to application crashes or unexpected behavior. For example, an input of 30 is valid if the acceptable range is between 1 and 100, while an input of 200 would be rejected due to being outside this range. By implementing range checks, we enhance the application's robustness and protect it from erroneous data entries. And last but not the least, let's examine low-relevance security concerns related to input validation and sanitization, focusing on edge cases and lesser-known threats. The table highlights several important techniques that can help us safeguard our applications against these subtle yet significant vulnerabilities. First, we begin with ASCIE header value verification. This technique ensures that all HTTP header values consist solely of valid ASCII characters. Validating header inputs for ASCII compliance is crucial because headers can be manipulated to execute malicious code or perform unauthorized actions. For instance, a valid input like content type text plain adheres to the ASCII standard, ensuring that the application processes it correctly. In contrast, an invalid input such as content type text chassis equal UTF-8 could lead to malformed requests, potentially causing security vulnerabilities and allowing attackers to exploit header manipulation. Next, we discuss the importance of input rejection on validation failure. This technique emphasizes the necessity of rejecting any inputs that do not pass validation checks. Implementing strict rejection policies significantly reduces the risk of processing invalid or potentially malicious data that could disrupt application logic or security. For example, an input like 123 is valid and would be accepted, while an invalid input such as angle brackets would be immediately flagged and rejected. This proactive approach is vital for maintaining application integrity, as it prevents harmful data from entering the system and minimizes potential attack vectors. We then move to discrete validation checks. This technique focuses on performing specialized checks for uncommon threats that may be overlooked by standard validation routines. By implementing checks for specific problematic characters and sequences, we can effectively address edge cases that could lead to vulnerabilities. For instance, a null byte, represented as %00, is a common injection vector used to manipulate string termination in programming. Rejecting inputs containing null bytes is essential, as allowing such inputs can lead to unexpected behaviors, including bypassing security controls or altering data processing. Thus, validating against them is crucial for securing our applications. Specifically, null byte validation ensures that inputs do not contain null byte characters. Null bytes can disrupt string processing, especially in languages that use null-terminated strings, leading to security vulnerabilities like injection attacks or data corruption. Detecting and rejecting null bytes in strings helps maintain the integrity of data handling processes. For example, an input like test %00 file is clearly invalid and would be flagged, while a straightforward input like test file passes validation. By filtering out null byte injections, we reinforce the application's resilience against exploitation. Next, we have new line character validation. This technique is designed to disallow new line characters in inputs, as their presence can facilitate HTTP response splitting and injection attacks. By checking for characters such as %0d, %0a, ER, and N, we effectively mitigate the risks associated with these vulnerabilities. For example, an input like line1/n line2 contains new line characters. making it invalid and susceptible to attacks that could alter response formatting or allow for content injection. In contrast, a valid string like valid string, free from such characters, passes the validation check and contributes to the overall security of the application. Finally, we discuss path traversal validation. This technique aims to prevent path traversal attacks, which occur when an attacker attempts to access files outside the intended directory structure. By implementing checks to reject inputs containing sequences like double dots, slash, or simply double dots, we safeguard against unauthorized file access that could compromise sensitive data or system integrity. For example, a valid input such as /safe/path/to/file indicates correct usage of the directory structure, ensuring that only permitted files are accessed. Conversely, an input like double dots, /double dot slash, etc. pursued attempts to traverse directories and would be flagged as invalid, effectively blocking a potential attack. In conclusion, securing inputs through effective validation and sanitization practices is essential for maintaining the integrity and security of our applications. By categorizing these techniques into high, moderate, and low relevance, we can better understand their importance in mitigating risks. High relevance practices, such as client data validation and the classification of data sources, serve as the first line of defense against critical threats. These techniques ensure that only valid and safe data is processed, significantly reducing the risk of vulnerabilities and attacks. As we move into moderate relevance techniques, we encounter common security concerns that, while perhaps not as critical, still require attention. Practices like redirect data validation and the canonicalization process help safeguard against exploitation that may occur if we overlook these aspects. Finally, low-relevance techniques address edge cases and lesser-known threats, such as ASCII header value verification and discrete validation checks. Although these may seem minor, they play a vital role in creating a robust security framework. By thoroughly understanding and implementing these validation and sanitization techniques, we can create applications that not only function efficiently, but also protect against a wide array of potential threats. As we progress through this course, we will delve into each of these practices in detail, ensuring you have the knowledge and skills necessary to implement effective data validation strategies. That's all what I wanted to share with you in this lesson. I hope it was interesting for you. Let's recap what we've learned from the lesson. We learned how to secure inputs through effective validation and sanitization practices. We explored high-relevance techniques that focus on critical threat mitigation, such as client data validation and the classification of data sources. Together, we examined moderate relevance practices, including redirect data validation and the canonicalization process. We discussed the importance of character set specifications, such as UTF-8, to ensure consistent data handling. We reviewed low-relevance techniques that address edge cases, like ASCII header value verification and path traversal validation. We emphasized the significance of implementing a centralized input validation routine to enhance overall security. Lastly, we highlighted the necessity of input rejection on validation failure to prevent processing of harmful data. That's it for the lesson. Thanks a lot for your attention. I wish you a great day and see you in the next lesson. Hello? In this lesson, I will teach you how to safeguard outputs of your program. In today's session, we will explore best practices for data encoding and sanitization, emphasizing their critical role in maintaining secure systems. We will start by examining the most impactful techniques focused on mitigating significant threats, highlighting the importance of protecting outputs that involve untrusted data. Understanding these principles is vital for safeguarding against various vulnerabilities. As we progress, we will also cover practices that, while less critical, contribute to overall data integrity and security. This includes the need for thorough encoding measures, and the utilization of reliable routines to ensure safe data handling. By the end of our discussion, you will have a solid grasp of essential strategies for effective data protection. Let's start our lesson. Today we will explore best practices for data encoding and sanitization, focusing on their relevance to security. The list is categorized by significance, starting with high relevance practices that are essential for mitigating critical threats. These include contextual sanitization of outputs with untrusted data, sanitizing data for operating system commands, and encoding output from outside the application's trust boundary. As we progress, we'll also discuss moderate relevance practices, such as ensuring all characters are encoded unless deemed safe and using tested routines for outbound encoding. Finally, we'll touch on low relevance considerations, including conducting encoding on trusted systems. Each of these practices plays a crucial role in safeguarding applications and ensuring data integrity, and we will delve into the details of each item shortly. In this session, we will introduce another way to categorize best practices for data encoding and sanitization based on complexity. This framework helps to simplify the learning process by organizing techniques into basic, intermediate, and advanced levels. By understanding these levels, you can approach the principles of data protection in a structured manner, making it easier to grasp the nuances of each practice. This alternative categorization allows for a more tailored learning experience, enabling you to focus on the areas that align with your current understanding and skill level, whether you are just starting or looking to deepen your expertise. Selecting the appropriate grouping technique can enhance your comprehension and application of data encoding and sanitization practices. Let's explore this approach together. As I promised, let's provide a detailed overview of each technique. As you saw, there are different ways to group these practices. However, for the sake of this lesson, let's organize all the techniques by relevance and review them in that order. And in case you have any questions during the lesson, no need to wait till the end of the lesson, write them in comment section below the video and I will be happy to answer. Let's begin with the high relevance practices for safeguarding outputs, which are critical for mitigating significant threats to our systems. First, we focus on contextual sanitization of all output containing untrusted data for SQL, XML, and LDAP queries. This practice is essential to prevent SQL injection attacks, where attackers can manipulate queries by injecting malicious input. To safeguard against this, we should employ parameterized queries or prepared statements. These techniques clearly separate the structure of SQL commands from the data, ensuring that user input is treated solely as data. By implementing this method, we significantly reduce the risk of unauthorized access or data manipulation within our databases. Next, we examine the sanitization of all output with untrusted data for operating system commands. Command injection vulnerabilities pose serious risks, allowing attackers to execute arbitrary commands on the server. To mitigate this, it is crucial to validate and sanitize any user-supplied input before it interacts with the operating system. This involves removing or escaping potentially harmful characters and commands. By using safe API functions and rigorous validation, we can effectively prevent the execution of malicious commands, safeguarding the integrity of the system. Finally, we look at contextual output encoding of all data returned to the client that originated outside the application's trust boundary. This is particularly important for preventing cross-site scripting attacks. When outputting untrusted data, encoding it properly, such as through HTML entity encoding, ensures that the browser interprets it as data rather than executable code. This approach protects users from potential script execution within their browsers, enhancing both security and user trust in the application. Let's delve deeper into the moderate relevance practices for safeguarding outputs, as they are vital for addressing common security concerns. First, the encoding of all characters unless they are confirmed safe for the intended interpreter is an essential practice. This means that developers should not assume any character is harmless without verification. By treating every character as potentially dangerous, we create a robust defense against attacks such as cross-site scripting and school injection. For instance, when displaying user-generated content on a web page, all characters should be encoded according to the context. HTML encoding for web content, URL encoding for query strings, and so forth. This process ensures that special characters like less than character, greater than character, and ampersand are rendered as plain text rather than executable code, preventing attackers from injecting harmful scripts. Next, let's consider the utilization of a standard, tested routine for each type of outbound encoding. This practice is crucial because it promotes consistency and minimizes the likelihood of introducing vulnerabilities due to developer error. By using established libraries that have been rigorously tested, such as OWASP's Java encoder or the HTML purifier for PHP, developers can rely on tried-and-true methods for secure output encoding. These libraries are designed to handle various contexts and automatically implement the necessary encoding based on the type of output. In contrast, creating custom encoding functions can lead to oversights such as forgetting to account for certain character sets or context-specific requirements. This reliance on standard routines not only enhances security, but also allows developers to focus on other critical areas of application development, knowing that the encoding process is robust and reliable. Let's delve deeper into the key points related to conducting all encoding on a trusted system. First, conducting encoding on a trusted system, such as a server, is pivotal in maintaining the integrity and security of data. When we execute encoding operations in a secure environment, we effectively shield our applications from various attack vectors, especially those that target client-side vulnerabilities. For example, if an attacker manipulates the client environment, they could exploit weaknesses in scripts to bypass encoding processes. By centralizing encoding on a trusted server, we can ensure that all data is sanitized and validated before it reaches the user interface. Now, let's discuss how to implement this practice effectively. Utilizing established frameworks and libraries is essential. These tools are often designed with security best practices in mind and can automatically handle encoding and validation. For instance, frameworks like Django or ASP.NET provide built-in features that facilitate safe data handling, ensuring that developers can focus on functionality without sacrificing security. Additionally, implementing strict access controls on the server further ensures that only authorized processes can perform encoding tasks, minimizing the risk of unauthorized manipulation. Consider a practical example. Imagine a web application that collects user comments. If these comments are processed client-side, an attacker could easily submit a script instead of plain text, leading to XSS vulnerabilities. However, if the server encodes these comments before they are sent to the client, any malicious script is transformed into harmless text, thus preventing execution in the user's browser. This not only protects the application but also fosters a safer user experience, reinforcing their confidence in using the platform. Let's summarize the key points regarding best practices for data encoding and sanitization. First, we must recognize the critical importance of high-relevance techniques aimed at mitigating serious threats. Contextual sanitization of outputs containing untrusted data is paramount, particularly for SQL, XML, and LDAP queries. By ensuring that any data entering these systems is sanitized, we significantly reduce the risk of injection attacks and data breaches. Furthermore, sanitizing outputs for operating system commands is equally vital. If untrusted data is executed as part of a command, it could lead to catastrophic results, including system compromise. Additionally, we must implement contextual output encoding for any data returned to the client that originates outside the application's trust boundary. This is crucial to prevent cross-site scripting and other vulnerabilities. While HTML entity encoding is a common method, we must remember that it is not universally applicable, highlighting the need for a nuanced approach based on the context of the data. Moving to moderate relevance, we should encode all characters unless they have been confirmed safe for the intended interpreter. This practice ensures that we do not overlook any potential vulnerabilities. Utilizing standard tested routines for outbound encoding is also essential. Relying on established methods not only enhances security, but also streamlines development by reducing the likelihood of errors. Lastly, while conducting encoding on a trusted system may seem like a lower relevance issue, it still plays a significant role in overall security. By ensuring that encoding processes occur in a controlled environment, we protect against client-side vulnerabilities that attackers might exploit. That's all what I wanted to discuss with you in this lesson. Let's recap what we have learned today. We explored best practices for data encoding and sanitization, focusing on critical threat mitigation strategies. We learned about the importance of contextual sanitization for outputs containing untrusted data in SQL, XML, and LDAP queries. We discussed the need to sanitize output with untrusted data for operating system commands to prevent vulnerabilities. We examined the significance of contextual output encoding for client data originating outside the application's trust boundary. We identified the practice of encoding all characters unless they are confirmed safe for the intended interpreter. We reviewed the importance of utilizing standard tested routines for each type of outbound encoding to ensure security. Lastly, we acknowledged the need to conduct all encoding on a trusted system, such as the server, to enhance security measures. That's it for the lesson. Thanks a lot for your attention. Have a great day and see you in the next lesson. Hello! In today's session, we will be focusing on best practices for managing user authentication and securing credentials effectively. We'll begin by exploring essential measures that protect access to your system, ensuring that all interactions are secure and handled on trusted platforms. These foundational practices will help safeguard against common threats and provide a secure environment for users to authenticate and manage their accounts safely. Next, we'll dive into more advanced techniques that enhance overall security. This includes how to manage user credentials in a way that protects sensitive information while maintaining usability. We'll also address strategies for reducing the risk of unauthorized access, securing high-value accounts, and implementing additional layers of protection for sensitive operations. Together, these practices will provide a comprehensive approach to mastering user authentication and keeping systems secure. Let's get started. In this session, we'll explore best practices for managing user authentication, organized by relevance to help prioritize what's most critical. We'll start by discussing high-relevance practices designed to mitigate serious security threats. These focus on ensuring that all parts of your system are protected by robust authentication methods, handling credential storage securely, and implementing policies that prevent password reuse or weak authentication points. These foundational practices are key to safeguarding user data and system access. As we move forward, we'll address moderate and low relevance concerns, which are important but address more common or edge case scenarios. These include using standardized, tested authentication systems, enforcing strong password policies, and implementing advanced measures like multi-factor authentication for highly sensitive accounts. We'll also cover practical considerations like secure password resets, account monitoring, and avoiding risky default configurations. Each of these techniques helps ensure a comprehensive and secure approach to managing user credentials. This second list organizes authentication best practices by complexity, providing a different way to approach learning these techniques. By grouping practices into basic, intermediate, and advanced levels, it allows you to focus on the areas most suited to your current skill level. Whether you're just starting with foundational practices like ensuring authentication for all resources and preventing password reuse, or you're ready to tackle more advanced measures like multi-factor authentication and secure credential storage, this categorization helps streamline the learning process. Remember, this is just another way to group these principles. You can select whichever categorization method works best for you, whether by relevance or complexity, to learn and apply these security practices more effectively. The goal is to gradually build your understanding, starting from the basics and moving toward more complex techniques, ensuring you have a strong, secure authentication system. As I promised, let's provide a detailed overview of each technique. As you saw, there are different ways to group these practices. However, for the sake of this lesson, let's organize all the techniques by relevance and review them in that order. And in case you have any questions during the lesson, no need to wait till the end of the lesson. Write them in Q&A section below the video and I will be happy to answer. Let's dive deeper into the critical best practices for managing user authentication and credentials, which are essential for preventing unauthorized access and protecting sensitive data. First, requiring authentication for all pages and resources is fundamental. Every part of the application that contains or interacts with sensitive information must be protected by an authentication layer. This means that unless a page is specifically designed to be publicly accessible, like a homepage or help page, it should require the user to log in. This ensures that only authenticated users can access features such as personal dashboards, payment histories, or private documents, safeguarding against data leaks and unauthorized access. Next, we highlight the importance of enforcing authentication on a trusted system, such as a server. Authentication should never be handled client-side, like in JavaScript, as this exposes sensitive processes to potential manipulation by attackers. By conducting all authentication checks on the server, we ensure that login details and authentication logic are securely processed within a controlled environment. This mitigates risks such as credential theft, where attackers intercept or manipulate login requests on the client side. Now, let's talk about secure failure of authentication controls. When an authentication attempt fails, the response must not provide specific details about why it failed. For example, if a user enters an incorrect username or password, a generic error message like invalid username or password should be displayed. This approach prevents attackers from learning whether they have a correct username and encourages guessing both parts of the login credentials simultaneously, significantly reducing the effectiveness of brute force attacks. Another critical practice is encrypting and securely storing credentials. Passwords, API keys, and other sensitive authentication details must be encrypted using strong algorithms like Bcrypt or Argon2 and never stored in plain text. Additionally, credentials should not be hard-coded into source code repositories, which could be exposed. Instead, secure storage solutions like environment variables, dedicated credential stores, or cloud-based secret managers should be used. This helps prevent credential leaks, even in the event of a server or source code compromise. Regarding authentication failures, it is also essential to use indistinct failure responses. A vague message such as invalid username or password avoids giving hints to attackers about whether their guesses are correct. If an error message specifies that the username exists but the password is wrong, attackers can use that information to focus on cracking passwords for valid usernames, which can dramatically increase the success rate of credential stuffing or brute force attacks. Preventing password reuse is another important security measure. When users are allowed to reuse old passwords, they may be inclined to pick previously compromised or weak passwords, increasing the risk of a breach. By enforcing policies that require users to create unique passwords each time they change them, we reduce the likelihood of attackers gaining access through old, compromised credentials. Typically, password history mechanisms are used to ensure users can't repeat previous passwords. Finally, securing password reset and change processes is just as important as protecting the initial account creation. Resetting or changing passwords is often targeted by attackers attempting to take over accounts. By implementing the same level of verification for password resets, such as identity confirmation via email, two-factor authentication, or security questions, we ensure that only the legitimate user can modify their credentials. This prevents unauthorized access to accounts even if an attacker has stolen part of a user's credentials. Let's take a deeper dive into each of these moderate relevance practices for managing user credentials and securing authentication, highlighting how these best practices can be implemented and the risks they mitigate. First, we focus on the utilization of standard, tested authentication services. Creating a custom authentication system can be error-prone and difficult to secure, especially when there are well-established solutions available. Services like OAuth, OpenID Connect, and SIML have been rigorously tested in various environments and come with built-in security mechanisms that reduce the risk of vulnerabilities. These services handle common concerns like token validation, session management, and secure data transmission, so developers can focus on other aspects of the system without worrying about reinventing the core authentication logic. By relying on such standardized services, we minimize the chances of introducing flaws that could be exploited by attackers. Next, we consider the importance of centralizing authentication controls. Managing authentication in a fragmented way, where different parts of an application handle authentication independently, can lead to inconsistencies and security gaps. Centralizing authentication, either through a dedicated service or centralized library, ensures that all aspects of the system follow the same rigorous processes. This consistency is essential for enforcing policies, such as session expiration and token validation, across the board. It also simplifies troubleshooting and auditing by giving a single point of control over authentication, which reduces errors and complexity in managing user sessions. Now, let's talk about enforcing password complexity and length requirements. Weak passwords are one of the most common entry points for attackers, especially in brute force or credential stuffing attacks. By enforcing policies that require users to create strong passwords, such as a minimum of 12 characters with a mix of letters, numbers, and symbols, we raise the bar for attackers. Complex passwords make it exponentially more difficult for automated tools to guess or crack user credentials, significantly improving account security. It's also important to regularly review these policies to ensure they are aligned with evolving threats. When discussing obscuring password entry on the user's screen, it's about ensuring that users' passwords remain private even as they are being typed. Using the type password attribute in input fields masks the password, preventing casual onlookers or someone nearby from seeing the user's password. Additionally, implementing an optional Show Password toggle can give users flexibility to view their password if needed without compromising security. This approach prevents common attacks like shoulder surfing, where someone might visually steal the password by looking over the user's shoulder. Next, account disabling after multiple invalid login attempts is critical for defending against brute force attacks. If attackers can attempt unlimited login attempts without consequence, they can systematically guess passwords until they succeed. By locking the account after a predetermined number of failed login attempts, such as 5, the system prevents further guessing. Temporary account locks, for example 15 minutes, allow legitimate users to try again later while frustrating attackers, effectively slowing down their attempts to gain access. This also provides time for the legitimate user to be notified and respond to any suspicious activity. Notifying users when their password is reset is an important step in keeping users aware of account activity. If a legitimate user receives a notification of a password reset that they didn't initiate, it alerts them to the possibility of unauthorized access. This allows them to immediately take action, such as contacting support or further securing their account. This simple notification step helps involve the user in monitoring their own account security, making unauthorized password resets harder for attackers to slip through unnoticed. Let's move on to re-authentication before performing critical operations. Even if a user is already logged in, requiring them to re-enter their password before performing sensitive actions such as updating payment information, changing email addresses, or transferring funds adds an extra layer of protection. This ensures that the session hasn't been hijacked and that the person performing the operation is truly authorized. Re-authentication serves as a final confirmation of the user's identity before proceeding with high-risk actions. Lastly, we focus on multi-factor authentication, which is one of the strongest defenses for sensitive accounts. Multi-factor authentication requires the user to provide 2 or more verification factors. Something they know, password, something they have, a phone or security token, or something they are, fingerprint or facial recognition. Even if an attacker manages to steal a user's password, they would still need access to the second factor to complete the login. This drastically reduces the risk of account compromise, especially for high-value transactional accounts or accounts with sensitive information. Multi-factor authentication is a powerful tool for defending against a wide range of attacks, including phishing and credential theft. Let's delve deeper into each of these low-relevance practices for managing user credentials, focusing on the edge cases and lesser-known threats they address, and why they are important to maintain a secure authentication system. First, we have the segregation of authentication logic from the requested resource. By separating authentication from the resources users are trying to access, we create a centralized and consistent authentication process. This segregation ensures that attackers cannot bypass authentication by directly interacting with the protected resource. For example, users are redirected to a secure login page rather than having login forms embedded within individual resource pages. This approach centralizes control over authentication, reducing vulnerabilities and simplifying the management of access across different parts of the system. Next is the storage of passwords as strong one-way salted hashes. This practice involves using secure cryptographic algorithms like Bcrypt or Argon2 to hash passwords with a unique salt. The salt adds randomness, making it significantly harder for attackers to crack passwords through methods like rainbow table attacks. Storing passwords as plain text or using weak hashing algorithms such as MD5 is extremely dangerous, as it allows attackers to recover passwords easily if they access the database. With salted hashing, even if an attacker gains access to the hashed passwords, they cannot easily revert them to their original form. In cases where authentication requires multiple steps, it is crucial to validate authentication data only upon completion of all input. Validating user input too early, such as checking whether the username exists before asking for the password, gives attackers clues about valid usernames and encourages them to brute force the password. Instead, by validating all data only at the end of the process, we reduce the risk of giving attackers useful feedback during the login process. This practice ensures that an attacker can't validate pieces of authentication data in isolation. Another important best practice is to use only HTTP POST requests for transmitting authentication credentials. Sending login credentials via HTTP GET exposes sensitive information in URLs, which can be logged in server access logs or leaked through referrer headers, By using POST requests, we ensure that credentials are securely transmitted within the body of the request, making them harder to intercept or expose. This minimizes the risk of sensitive data being compromised through improper transmission methods. For temporary passwords and password reset links, it's essential to enforce short expiration times. Temporary passwords or reset links are commonly targeted by attackers, and if they are valid for too long, they pose a significant risk. By limiting their validity to 15–30 minutes, we drastically reduce the window of opportunity for an attacker to exploit them. Additionally, forcing the user to create a permanent password upon their next login ensures that temporary credentials cannot be reused indefinitely. We also need to discuss the disabling of Remember Me functionality for passwords. While the Remember Me option offers convenience, it can also present serious security risks, especially if the device storing the password is compromised. If the credentials are stored insecurely, such as in cookies or local storage, attackers who gain access to the device could retrieve them. Disabling this feature or ensuring it is properly secured, for example using secure tokens instead of passwords, prevents these vulnerabilities from being exploited. Next, reporting the last use of a user account to the user adds an extra layer of transparency and security. By showing users the date and time of their last successful or failed login, we give them the ability to monitor their own account activity. If a user notices an unfamiliar login, they can take immediate action to secure their account by changing their password or contacting support. This feedback loop is a simple but effective way to involve users in protecting their accounts. Another practice is to monitor for attacks where the same password is used across multiple user accounts. Credential stuffing attacks, where attackers use leaked passwords from one breach to attempt logins on other accounts, are increasingly common. Monitoring for this type of activity helps to identify large-scale attacks early. For example, if the same password is used in failed login attempts across multiple accounts, this is a red flag indicating a credential stuffing attack. Taking action such as temporarily locking accounts or requiring password resets helps mitigate the impact of these attacks. Changing default vendor-supplied passwords and user IDs is another often overlooked practice. Many systems come with default usernames and passwords for administrative accounts, and these defaults are widely known to attackers. If left unchanged, they provide an easy entry point for unauthorized access. As soon as a system is installed, these default credentials should be replaced with strong, unique ones to prevent attacks that exploit default settings. Finally, enforcing regular password changes based on policy or regulation ensures that passwords don't remain static for long periods, reducing the risk of long-term compromise. Policies that require password changes every 60 to 90 days help mitigate the risk of credential theft over time. This practice ensures that even if a password is compromised, its lifespan is limited. Enforcing these policies, especially in compliance with regulations like GDPR or HIPAA, ensures that organizations are consistently addressing security threats. In conclusion, we have explored a comprehensive framework for managing user credentials and strengthening authentication systems, categorized by relevance to ensure we tackle the most critical threats first. Let's recap. Starting with high-relevance practices, these are the core techniques that provide a robust defense against critical threats. For example, ensuring that authentication is required for all resources protects the integrity of your system, preventing unauthorized access. Enforcing authentication controls on a trusted server adds an additional layer of protection by centralizing authentication away from the vulnerabilities of client-side systems. Another important point is ensuring that authentication failures are secure. Using generic error messages like invalid username or password avoids giving attackers clues about which part of the authentication is incorrect. These practices, along with strong encryption for credential storage and prevention of password reuse, help build a strong foundation for any secure application. Moving into moderate relevance practices, these focus on improving security while balancing usability. Utilizing standard, tested authentication services prevents the risks associated with building custom authentication solutions. Centralizing all authentication controls ensures consistency and reduces security gaps. Additionally, password complexity and length requirements should be enforced to ensure that weak passwords aren't the weak link in your security chain. Alongside these practices, such as obscuring password input on screen, disabling accounts after multiple failed login attempts, and requiring re-authentication before critical operations ensure that even during day-to-day use, accounts remain protected from common attacks. For more sensitive accounts, multi-factor authentication provides an additional layer of protection, safeguarding highly valuable accounts from phishing or credential stuffing attacks. Lastly, the low-relevance practices are focused on fine-tuning and addressing edge cases. Although these might not seem immediately critical, they can close gaps in your security posture. Examples include segregating authentication logic from resources to maintain centralized control over authentication processes and using only HTTP POST requests for transmitting credentials to ensure secure transmission. Other practices like monitoring for shared password attacks, enforcing short expiration times for temporary credentials, and ensuring users are notified of the last successful or failed login attempt offer enhanced visibility into suspicious activities. Additionally, disabling vendor-supplied default passwords and requiring periodic password changes per policy or regulation helps ensure that long-term access is tightly controlled. By following these practices at all levels, high, moderate, and low relevance, we establish a multi-layered defense that reduces the risk of credential theft and unauthorized access. Together, they form the backbone of a secure authentication system, providing a strong barrier against both common and sophisticated attacks. That's all what I plan to discuss with you in this lesson. Let's recap what we have learned in the lesson. We explored the importance of requiring authentication for all resources, ensuring access is secure across the entire application. We discussed enforcing all authentication controls on trusted systems, like servers, and the importance of secure failure mechanisms. You learned about storing encrypted authentication credentials securely and the importance of preventing password reuse. We reviewed the necessity of using standardized authentication services and centralizing authentication controls for consistency and security. We implemented password complexity rules and examined techniques for account recovery, like notifying users upon password reset. Together, we applied multi-factor authentication (MFA) for high-value accounts and reviewed how re-authentication protects critical operations. Finally, we covered edge cases such as managing credential stores with strong password hashing and disabling vendor-supplied default credentials for added security. That's it for the lesson. Thanks a lot for your attention. Have a great day and see you in the next lesson. Hello team! In today's session we will be discussing the essential practices for securing user sessions in web applications. Our focus will be on strategies that ensure sessions are properly managed from the beginning of a user's interaction to the point of termination. We'll explore how to protect sessions from unauthorized access, maintain security across different points of connection, and ensure session integrity throughout the user's time on the system. Additionally, we'll examine how to enhance session stability during periods of activity and inactivity, ensuring that user experiences remain seamless without compromising security. We'll also discuss additional methods to protect against more advanced threats and how to apply extra layers of security for sensitive operations. By the end of our session, you'll have a solid framework for managing sessions securely while balancing risk and user convenience. In today's session, we will explore the best practices for session management, organized by their relevance to security. We'll start with high-relevance practices that are crucial for mitigating critical threats, such as how to properly create and terminate sessions, ensuring that session identifiers are securely generated and protected from exposure. These are foundational steps to maintain the integrity of user sessions, particularly when handling sensitive data. We'll also look at how to consistently secure sessions during transitions like switching from HTTP to HTTPS. Next, we'll cover practices addressing common security concerns, such as regularly regenerating session identifiers, setting appropriate session inactivity timeouts, and managing concurrent logins. Finally, we'll examine lower relevance practices that address edge cases, including securing cookies with specific attributes and using strong tokens for critical operations. These measures together will provide a complete approach to ensuring session security and protecting against a wide range of potential threats. On the slide, you can see another list with session management best practices, but this time organized by complexity. Grouping the techniques this way allows you to build your understanding progressively. We'll start with basic practices like setting secure attributes for cookies, ensuring logout functionality is available on all pages, and restricting session cookies to specific domains. These are the foundational steps every application should implement to manage user sessions securely. As we move into intermediate and advanced techniques, we'll explore more complex practices like creating secure session identifiers, prohibiting concurrent logins, and protecting server-side session data with strong controls. This structure allows you to tackle the principles step by step, making it easier to grasp and apply them. You can choose the categorization method that works best for your learning style, whether by relevance or complexity, to help you master session management faster. As I promised, let's provide a detailed overview of each technique. As you saw, there are different ways to group these practices. However, for the sake of this lesson, let's organize all the techniques by relevance and review them in that order. And in case you have any questions during the lesson, no need to wait till the end of the lesson. Write them in Q&A section below the video and I will be happy to answer. Let's dive deeper into each of these critical practices for securing sessions to ensure a more robust defense against hijacking and improve the stability of session management. First, we must emphasize the importance of full termination of the session upon log out. When a user logs out, both the client-side and server-side session data must be completely invalidated and removed. This ensures that no session remains active after the user has finished their interaction. If the session is only partially destroyed, particularly on the client side, an attacker who intercepts that session identifier could potentially reuse it, gaining unauthorized access to the user's account. Properly terminating the session on the server prevents this by fully severing the connection between the user and the application. Next, consider the creation of session identifiers on a trusted system, such as the server. Session identifiers, or session tokens, must be generated on the server, not client-side, to ensure their security. Server-side session generation uses secure, trusted mechanisms that produce unique and random session identifiers. If the session IDs are generated on the client side, they might be predictable or even tampered with by attackers. Using strong algorithms like cryptographically secure random number generators ensures that each session ID is unique and impossible to guess, protecting against session prediction attacks. Moving forward, we must take great care to prevent session identifier exposure. Session IDs should never be passed in URLs, error messages, or logs. If a session ID is exposed in these ways, attackers could steal it and use it to hijack the user's session by impersonating them. Instead, session identifiers should be transmitted and stored securely, typically within HTTP-only cookies, which are not accessible via JavaScript or exposed in the URL. This prevents attackers from accessing session tokens. either by intercepting network traffic or by tricking the user into sharing a link that contains the session ID. Additionally, it's vital to ensure the protection of server-side session data. Once a session is established, the server stores important data about the user's session, such as login state and permissions. This data should be carefully protected using proper access control mechanisms to prevent unauthorized access. For example, if attackers gain access to session data stored on the server, they could manipulate the session to gain unauthorized privileges. Proper encryption and access controls mitigate this risk by ensuring that only authorized components of the system can interact with session data. Now, let's talk about generating a new session identifier when switching from HTTP to HTTPS. When users move from an insecure HTTP connection to a secure HTTPS connection, it's essential to issue a new session ID. If the session ID remains the same, an attacker who intercepted the ID over the insecure HTTP channel could continue using it even after the connection is upgraded to HTTPS. By regenerating the session ID after moving to HTTPS, we prevent session fixation attacks, ensuring that the session remains secure after the switch. Moreover, it's best practice to use HTTPS consistently across the entire application to avoid these issues altogether. Finally, we need to discuss the disallowance of persistent logins and the enforcement of session timeouts. Persistent logins, or Remember Me features, allow users to stay logged in indefinitely. While this can be convenient, it also increases the risk of session hijacking, as a stolen session could remain valid for extended periods. By disallowing persistent logins and enforcing periodic session timeouts, even for active sessions, we reduce the window of opportunity for attackers. Sessions should expire after a certain period of inactivity, for example 15 minutes, and even active sessions should be forced to re-authenticate after a set period to ensure that the user is still in control of the account. Let's take a closer look at these moderate relevance practices for securing sessions and addressing common security concerns. These practices are not just about mitigating threats, but also about improving the stability and overall security of user sessions within your applications. First, the periodic generation of a new session identifier is a crucial measure in protecting user sessions from hijacking. During an active session, session IDs should be regenerated periodically and the old ones deactivated. This reduces the risk that a stolen session ID can be reused by an attacker. Essentially, it narrows the window of opportunity for session hijacking by constantly refreshing the session ID, making it more difficult for attackers to maintain access to a hijacked session. It's key that this happens behind the scenes without disrupting the user's experience, allowing seamless transitions while ensuring security. Next, generation of a new session ID upon re-authentication strengthens session security after sensitive operations. When a user re-authenticates, for example, after entering their password to access sensitive data or making a transaction, the system should immediately create a new session identifier. This ensures that the session remains fresh and fully under the user's control, preventing session fixation attacks. Session fixation occurs when an attacker forces a user to use a known session ID that they can later exploit. By generating a new session ID upon re-authentication, we prevent attackers from riding on an old session, making the application significantly more secure. Moving on, the session inactivity timeout is another essential practice. Sessions should automatically expire after a defined period of inactivity, typically 15 to 30 minutes. This ensures that if a user steps away from their device without logging out, their session will not remain open indefinitely. This practice mitigates the risk of someone taking over an unattended session, especially in shared or public environments. However, the timeout period must balance security with usability. If the timeout is too short, it can frustrate users who are forced to log in repeatedly. On the other hand, a longer timeout increases the risk of session hijacking. The prohibition of concurrent logins for the same user ID is another effective way to secure user sessions. Allowing multiple logins from different devices or locations can create security holes, as it becomes difficult to detect unauthorized access. Disallowing concurrent logins ensures that only one session is active per user at any given time. If someone tries to log in with the same credentials on a different device, the previous session is automatically terminated. This approach limits the risk of session hijacking because it prevents attackers from using stolen credentials while the legitimate user is still logged in. It also gives users a clear signal that something might be wrong if they are unexpectedly logged out. Next, we have cookie domain and path restrictions for session identifiers. Cookies containing session IDs should be scoped to the minimal domain and path necessary for the application to function. This means that the session cookie should only be sent when necessary, such as within a particular subdomain or directory of the website. By setting the domain and path attributes correctly, we reduce the exposure of session cookies, limiting their use to the intended area of the site. This helps protect against cross-site scripting or other attacks that try to steal cookies from broader parts of the domain. Cookies should also be marked as HTTP-only and secure, ensuring they are only accessible via secure channels and not through client-side scripts. Finally, closure of any pre-login sessions and generation of a new session after successful login ensures that no session data from the pre-login state can be exploited after authentication. When a user browses a site anonymously or interacts with it before logging in, there may be a session in place that tracks certain activities. If this pre-login session is reused after the user logs in, attackers could exploit it through session fixation. By closing the pre-login session and generating a fresh session identifier upon login, we eliminate any risk of the old session being hijacked. This creates a clean break between anonymous and authenticated browsing, reinforcing the security of the user's session. Let's now turn our attention to some low-relevance practices that focus on securing sessions by addressing edge cases and lesser-known threats. While these practices may seem specific, they play a critical role in preventing session hijacking and ensuring session stability for more sensitive operations. First, we'll start with the importance of setting the secure attribute for cookies transmitted over a TLS connection. The secure attribute ensures that cookies, such as session IDs, are only transmitted over secure, encrypted HTTPS channels. Without this attribute, cookies could potentially be transmitted over insecure HTTP connections, leaving them vulnerable to interception by attackers. For example, on public Wi-Fi, if a session cookie is sent without the secure flag over HTTP, a malicious actor could intercept that cookie and use it to hijack the user's session. By marking the cookie as secure, we prevent it from being sent over unencrypted connections, reducing the risk of session hijacking on insecure networks. Next, we have setting cookies with the HTTP-only attribute, which is a defense against cross-site scripting attacks. When the HTTP-only attribute is set on a cookie, it cannot be accessed via client-side JavaScript, meaning it is protected from malicious scripts that attempt to steal session cookies. Without this attribute, an attacker could inject JavaScript code into the website and use it to extract session cookies, which could then be used to impersonate the user. By marking cookies as HTTP only, even if cross-site scripting vulnerabilities exist on the site, the attacker will be unable to access sensitive cookies, adding an extra layer of defense. For sensitive server-side operations, such as account management, supplementing session management with strong random per session tokens is crucial. This technique is particularly effective in preventing cross-site request forgery attacks. Cross-site request forgery attacks trick users into submitting unintended requests to a web application where they are authenticated. By generating a unique cross-site request forgery token tied to each session and requiring it for sensitive operations, the server can validate that requests are legitimate and initiated by the user. For example, when a user tries to update their account information, the server validates the cross-site request forgery token along with the session ID. If the token is missing or invalid, the request is rejected, thereby preventing unauthorized changes to sensitive data. When it comes to highly sensitive or critical operations, such as processing financial transactions or resetting passwords, we enhance security by using per-request strong random tokens in addition to standard session management. These tokens are generated and validated for each individual request, ensuring that even if an attacker gains access to the session, they still cannot execute critical operations without the valid token for that specific request. This protects against cross-site request forgery and session fixation attacks by ensuring that every request is authenticated with a unique one-time use token. For instance, if a user is transferring money, a fresh token is generated for that specific transaction, making it nearly impossible for an attacker to hijack the transaction without both the session and the valid token. Finally, providing logout functionality on all protected pages is a simple but highly effective practice. Logout buttons should be easily accessible on every page where the user is authenticated. This allows users to terminate their sessions immediately, no matter where they are on the site. Without a visible logout option, users might leave their sessions open, especially on shared or public devices, increasing the risk of session hijacking. For example, if a user is browsing an account settings page and decides to walk away without logging out, an attacker could take advantage of that open session. By making logout functionality universally available, users are empowered to manage their sessions proactively, reducing the risk of unauthorized access to their accounts. In concluding our discussion on session management best practices, it's clear that managing user sessions is a critical aspect of securing any application. When we categorize these practices by relevance, we can better understand the layers of protection they provide and why each level is essential. Starting with high-relevance practices, these are focused on mitigating critical threats that could lead to serious vulnerabilities, such as session hijacking or fixation. Techniques like full session termination upon logout ensure that once a user is finished with their session, no remnants are left for potential exploitation. Creating session identifiers on trusted systems and using well-vetted algorithms ensures that session IDs are random and secure, making them difficult for attackers to predict. Furthermore, avoiding the exposure of session identifiers in URLs and maintaining server-side session data protection prevent attackers from accessing or exploiting session information. A critical aspect of session management is also maintaining secure transitions between HTTP and HTTPS. By generating new session IDs after the switch, we prevent attackers from exploiting previously insecure connections. Finally, practices like disallowing persistent logins ensure that sessions terminate even if they remain open, reducing the risk of long-term session exploitation. Moving to moderate relevance practices, these address common security concerns that can further harden session management. Periodic regeneration of session IDs during an active session reduces the risk of session hijacking by ensuring that even if a session ID is compromised, it will soon become invalid. Similarly, generating a new session ID upon reauthentication ensures session integrity, while inactivity timeouts prevent unattended sessions from being hijacked. Prohibiting concurrent logins ensures that only one session per user is active at a time, which helps detect and prevent unauthorized access. These practices ensure that session management doesn't just depend on initial authentication, but continues to protect the users throughout their interaction. Lastly, the low relevance practices target edge cases and lesser-known threats. Even though these practices may not be immediately critical, they are nonetheless important for a comprehensive security strategy. Setting the secure attribute for cookies ensures they are only transmitted over secure connections, while the HTTP-only attribute protects cookies from being accessed by malicious scripts, adding layers of defense against cross-site scripting attacks. In addition, using per-session and per-request tokens for sensitive or critical operations protects against cross-site request forgery attacks. Finally, making logout functionality available on all pages provides users with control over their sessions, allowing them to terminate them at any time, reducing the risk of session hijacking from inactive or abandoned sessions. That's all what I wanted to discuss with you in this lesson. Let's recap what we have learned in the lesson. We covered the importance of session management and explored how to properly terminate sessions and create secure session identifiers. You learned how to protect session data from exposure in URLs and logs while ensuring server-side session data is securely controlled. We discussed generating new session identifiers when switching from HTTP to HTTPS and why consistent use of HTTPS is crucial. We reviewed common session security practices like setting inactivity timeouts, prohibiting concurrent logins, and managing session cookie settings. Together, we explored advanced techniques for preventing session hijacking, such as periodic session ID regeneration and re-authentication. We also examined low-relevance practices, like adding extra tokens for sensitive operations and securing cookies with specific attributes. Lastly, we ensured that logout functionality is readily available on all pages requiring user authorization. That's all for the lesson. Thanks a lot for your attention. Have a great day and see you in the next lesson. Hello team! In today's session, we will be focusing on access control, which is a foundational aspect of system security. We'll start by discussing the importance of managing who can access various parts of an application, ensuring that sensitive areas are protected and only accessible by authorized individuals. This includes implementing strategies that keep the system secure, even if unexpected issues or failures occur, to prevent any unauthorized access. We'll also cover how to maintain consistent access controls throughout an application, ensuring that permissions are continuously monitored and updated as needed. Additionally, we'll explore how to document and standardize these access control practices to ensure security policies are clear and effectively implemented across the system. By the end of our discussion, you'll understand how to create a comprehensive and adaptable access control system that can address both common and rare security concerns. In today's session, we will explore best practices for access control, organized by relevance. These practices help ensure that sensitive data, functions, and resources within an application are only accessible to authorized users. Starting with high-relevance practices, these address critical threat mitigation, such as restricting access to protected URLs, functions, and data. These measures are essential for preventing unauthorized access, ensuring secure handling of failures in access controls, and protecting sensitive files and resources. These controls are foundational to the security of any system and will be the first focus of our discussion. Next, we'll cover moderate relevance practices, which address common security concerns like consistently enforcing authorization on every request, limiting the number of transactions a user can perform, and ensuring periodic revalidation of user permissions in long sessions. Finally, we'll touch on low-relevance practices that deal with edge cases, such as encrypting client-side state data, auditing inactive accounts, and applying the principle of least privilege. By working through this list, we'll gain a comprehensive understanding of how access control can protect an application at every level. Now, let's take a look at best practices for access control, but this time ordered by complexity. This categorization allows you to approach the principles step by step, starting from basic practices like restricting access to URLs, functions, and data, and ensuring secure failures in access controls. These foundational techniques are critical for setting up a secure system. As you gain confidence, you can progress to intermediate practices such as enforcing authorization on every request, segregating privileged logic, and periodically revalidating user permissions during long sessions. These controls add a deeper level of security and ensure consistency across various types of requests and activities. Finally, we reach the advanced practices, which focus on more complex and technical aspects, such as using encryption to prevent state tampering, implementing account auditing, and ensuring that access controls follow the principle of least privilege. Advanced measures also include the creation of detailed access control policies that formalize how access is managed across the system. Grouping access control practices by complexity provides a logical, progressive learning path that can help you understand and apply these principles more effectively. Depending on your needs, you can choose the ordering that best fits your learning style, whether it's relevance or complexity. As I promised, let's provide a detailed overview of each technique. As you saw, there are different ways to group these practices. However, for the sake of this lesson, let's organize all the techniques by relevance and review them in that order. And in case you have any questions during the lesson, no need to wait till the end of the lesson. Write them in Q&A section below the video and I will be happy to answer. Let's go deeper into these practices for locking down access and implementing robust authorization mechanisms, as they are crucial for protecting critical resources and functions in an application. Let's begin by focusing on the high-relevance practices, which are the most critical for mitigating serious threats. These measures ensure that access to sensitive resources, functions, and data is strictly limited to authorized users. Starting with these high-relevance controls will help us build a strong foundation for securing the most vulnerable aspects of an application. First, consider the importance of restricting access to protected URLs. This is one of the most fundamental security measures because unauthorized users could manipulate URLs to attempt to gain access to sensitive areas of an application, such as admin panels or private user dashboards. By placing server-side authorization checks on every protected URL, we ensure that only users with the correct permissions can access these areas. This is particularly important in applications where sensitive information, like user profiles or financial data, is displayed. Failing to restrict URL access could lead to privilege escalation, where a lower privileged user gains access to higher privileged functions simply by entering or guessing a URL. Next, we extend this principle to restricting access to protected functions within the application. While protecting URLs is crucial, it's equally important to restrict who can execute certain operations, such as deleting records, approving transactions, or updating sensitive settings. These operations should only be available to users with the necessary roles and permissions. For instance, only administrators should be able to delete user accounts or modify system-wide configurations. Without these function-level controls, malicious users could exploit vulnerabilities to perform unauthorized actions, potentially causing harm to the application or its data. Then, there's restricting access to application data. Not all users need access to the same data, and some information, such as financial details or personal data, should be tightly controlled. Implementing role-based access to specific data sets ensures that only authorized users can view or modify sensitive information. For example, in a human resources application, only HR personnel should have access to salary data, while regular employees should only be able to view their own records. Data access controls help prevent accidental or intentional exposure of sensitive information, reducing the risk of data breaches. Now, let's talk about secure failure of access controls. In any application, there is always the risk that access controls might fail due to system errors or misconfigurations. When this happens, the default behavior should always be to deny access rather than granting it. This is known as a fail-secure approach. By ensuring that access is denied when a failure occurs, we eliminate the possibility that attackers could exploit system errors to gain unauthorized access. For example, if an application fails to retrieve a user's permissions, it should default to denying access to sensitive areas until the permissions are properly verified. Similarly, applications should deny all access if security configuration information cannot be retrieved. If for any reason the application cannot access its security settings, perhaps due to a system failure or missing configuration file, no access should be granted to critical resources. This principle ensures that the system doesn't inadvertently open doors to sensitive data or functionality simply because its security settings are temporarily unavailable. Blocking access during such incidents prevents attackers from exploiting these temporary vulnerabilities to gain unauthorized entry. Another critical element is restricting direct object references. This means users should not be able to manipulate URLs or parameters to access resources that don't belong to them. For example, if user records are stored by ID, an attacker might try to access someone else's record by changing the ID in the URL. To prevent this, applications should use indirect object references, such as tokens or mappings, and perform access control checks on each request. This ensures that users can only access the objects they are authorized to see, protecting sensitive data and files from being exposed. Finally, we must ensure the restriction of access to files or external resources. Many applications allow users to access files either stored locally or through third-party services, such as document storage systems. However, without proper authorization checks, users might be able to access files or resources they aren't supposed to. For example, a user might try to access another user's private files by altering file paths or exploiting weak permissions. By enforcing strict access controls over both internal files and external resources, we ensure that users can only access the resources they are specifically authorized to view or modify. Now, let's dive deeper into these moderate relevance practices for robust authorization mechanisms, each of which addresses common security concerns in day-to-day application use. These are not always the highest priority measures, but are crucial for maintaining consistent, reliable, and long-term security. First, enforcing authorization controls on every request is essential. It's not enough to only check permissions when a user logs in or accesses a web page. Every single request, whether from Ajax, server-side scripts, or client-side technologies like Flash, must undergo an authorization check. This ensures that even background processes, which users may not see, are fully secured. Without this, attackers could exploit unnoticed gaps in these invisible processes to gain unauthorized access. By ensuring that every type of request, no matter how small, is properly validated, we close a significant security loophole that could be otherwise overlooked. Next, in cases where users remain logged in for extended periods, we need to periodically revalidate their authorization. Over time, users' roles or privileges may change due to organizational shifts or changes in their account status. For example, an administrator might lose their privileges while they are still logged in. If we do not periodically revalidate these permissions, the user could continue to access sensitive areas or functions they should no longer have access to. Setting up a system where long-running sessions periodically check the user's current role ensures that access is always up to date and in line with their current permissions. Another key practice is ensuring consistency between server-side access controls and the presentation layer, UI. It's crucial that what users can see and do in the interface matches what the server allows them to access. Imagine a scenario where certain administrative functions are hidden from the user interface for a regular user, but the backend still allows these functions to be executed if requested manually. This inconsistency creates a significant security risk, as unauthorized users could still manipulate functions that are not meant for them. By synchronizing what is shown in the interface with what the backend permits, we ensure that users can only see and interact with elements they are genuinely authorized to use. Let's also talk about limiting the number of transactions a user or device can perform in a set period. This practice is particularly effective in preventing abuse and deterring automated attacks. For example, allowing users to send hundreds of requests per minute might seem harmless until an attacker uses this capability for brute force login attempts or a denial of service attack overwhelming the system. By capping the number of transactions per user or device slightly above what's needed for legitimate business functions, we can slow down or prevent automated attacks without negatively impacting normal users. Segregation of sensitive code is another important practice. By separating privileged logic from general application code, we create a more secure environment for critical operations. This means that the code handling sensitive tasks, such as administrative privileges or financial transactions, is isolated from the rest of the application. This separation reduces the chance that attackers or unauthorized users will gain access to privileged functions by compromising general application code. For instance, an admin function to delete users should not be mixed with regular user operations like updating profiles. Keeping these distinct minimizes risk and limits access to only the most authorized individuals. Finally, it's essential to restrict access to user and data attributes that determine access controls. These attributes, such as user roles, permissions, and security policies, are fundamental to how authorization decisions are made. If attackers can manipulate this information, they could escalate their privileges or bypass controls entirely. For example, if a user can change their role attribute from user to admin, they could gain unauthorized access to sensitive functions. By locking down access to these critical data points, we ensure that only authorized personnel can modify access control settings, protecting the overall integrity of the system. Let's delve a bit deeper into these low-relevance practices for locking down access, which, though often considered edge cases or lesser-known threats, are essential for creating a robust and comprehensive security framework. These practices may not come into play as frequently as more obvious security measures, but addressing them helps ensure that even subtle vulnerabilities are mitigated. First, consider the use of encryption and integrity checking for client-side state data. In some applications, it's necessary to store certain state information, like session tokens or temporary user data, on the client side. However, this poses a risk because client-side data can be manipulated by attackers. By encrypting this data and adding integrity checks, such as hashing or cryptographic signatures, we make sure that even if the data is intercepted or tampered with, it cannot be used to gain unauthorized access. The server can decrypt and verify the integrity of the data before processing it, ensuring that no unauthorized modifications have occurred. Without these checks, an attacker could alter client-side data to escalate their privileges or hijack someone else's session. Moving on, we have the use of the referrer header as a supplemental check. The referrer header, which shows the origin of the request, can be used to help validate whether a request is legitimate. However, it's important to understand that this header can be easily spoofed and should never be used as the sole method of authorization. Instead, it should be combined with more robust methods, like session tokens or role-based access control. By doing so, we add an extra layer of verification while still relying on stronger primary security measures. It can provide some useful information but should not be treated as a reliable security gate on its own. Next, we need to address account auditing and disabling unused accounts. Over time, many user accounts may become inactive, whether due to employees leaving, temporary access being granted, or simply password expiration. These dormant accounts are often overlooked but pose a significant security risk, as they could be exploited by attackers. By implementing regular audits that flag and disable accounts that haven't been used for a defined period, such as 30 days after password expiration, we prevent attackers from hijacking these neglected accounts. Automated deactivation of inactive accounts reduces the potential attack surface and ensures that only active, necessary accounts remain accessible. Another crucial practice is the disabling of accounts and termination of sessions when authorization ceases. When a user's role changes, such as when an employee is demoted, changes departments, or leaves the organization, their access should be immediately adjusted. This means disabling their account or reducing their permissions and terminating any active sessions they have. Without this step, users could retain access to sensitive data or critical functions that they no longer have authorization for, leaving the system vulnerable. Automating this process ensures that as soon as an individual's role or employment status changes, their access is modified accordingly, preventing potential unauthorized use. Next, we come to the application of the least privilege principle for service accounts. Service accounts are used by applications to perform specific tasks, such as interacting with external systems or running scheduled jobs. These accounts, however, can become targets for attackers, especially if they have broad access across the system. By ensuring that service accounts are granted only the minimum permissions they need to perform their functions, we limit the potential damage that could occur if they were compromised. For example, a service account for file backup should only have access to the files it needs to back up, not the entire database or system. This practice significantly reduces the attack surface by keeping service accounts tightly controlled. Lastly, the creation of an access control policy is a foundational step for ensuring that access control across the organization is consistent and well documented. This policy should detail the business rules, access criteria, and processes for provisioning and controlling access to sensitive resources. It should outline who can access specific data types and under what conditions, as well as the processes for granting, revoking, and auditing access. Having this policy in place helps ensure that access control decisions are aligned with both business needs and security best practices. A well-documented policy not only reduces errors in managing access, but also provides a clear framework for addressing future changes in access requirements. In conclusion, when we look at best practices for access control, we can break them down by relevance to critical security needs. Starting with high relevance practices, these are essential for protecting the most sensitive aspects of an application. By restricting access to protected URLs, functions, and data, we ensure that only authorized users have access to critical parts of the system. This minimizes the risk of unauthorized access through direct URL manipulation, function calls, or data exposure. Additionally, practices like secure failure of access controls and denial of access when security configurations are unavailable safeguard the system in case of errors or system malfunctions, ensuring that access defaults to a secure state rather than opening potential vulnerabilities. Other measures, such as limiting direct object references and controlling access to external resources, further reinforce the idea that any access should be thoroughly verified and restricted to only those who are authorized. Moving to the moderate relevance practices, These are more about ensuring consistent enforcement of access controls throughout the application's operation. For example, the need to enforce authorization on every request, whether through AJAX, server-side scripts, or third-party requests, is crucial for preventing gaps where unauthorized users could gain access. Regularly revalidating a user's authorization, especially during long sessions, ensures that changing permissions or roles are always updated, reducing the risk of privilege escalation. We also emphasize limiting the number of transactions a user or device can perform to prevent abuse, as well as segregating privileged logic from general application code to isolate sensitive functions. All of these practices contribute to a more secure, stable environment by addressing common risks that occur during normal operations. Finally, low-relevance practices may deal with edge cases and lesser-known threats, but they are no less important. Measures like encryption and integrity checking of client-side state data prevent tampering with data stored outside the server's immediate control. Using the referer header as a supplemental check, while not reliable on its own, can provide extra assurance when paired with other security measures. Regular account auditing and automatically disabling unused accounts help reduce the risk of old or forgotten accounts becoming attack vectors. Additionally, applying the least privilege principle to service accounts and documenting all of this in a formal access control policy ensures that access control mechanisms are consistently applied, thoroughly documented, and aligned with security best practices. That's all what I wanted to share with you in this lesson. Let's recap what we have learned today. We explored the importance of restricting access to protected URLs, functions, and application data to authorized users only to prevent unauthorized access. We discussed how secure failure mechanisms and access denial, when security configurations are unavailable, help ensure that the system stays protected in case of errors. We learned the value of enforcing authorization on every request, including server-side scripts and AJAX requests, ensuring consistent protection across all layers of the application. We examined how periodically revalidating a user's authorization and limiting transaction volume helps prevent session hijacking and automated attacks. We looked into the importance of segregating privileged logic from general code to isolate critical functions from less secure areas. We reviewed the necessity of auditing accounts and disabling unused ones to mitigate risks from inactive accounts, as well as the importance of disabling sessions when authorization changes. Lastly, we discussed creating an access control policy, documenting rules and criteria to ensure consistent and secure access provisioning and control across the organization. That's all for this lesson. Thanks a lot for your attention. Have a great day and see you in the next lesson.